news to you I'll tell, how the good old Union has come in here to dwell.
A battle in the heart of Alabama caught our attention. Coal miners in one community, they've been on strike now for months.
Working as long as 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, in some of the most dangerous conditions.
I really think that the labor movement is the single greatest force for democracy in the history of the United States.
The story of Alabama is a story of not just resilience, but of militancy.
I say no contract, you say no code. No contract, no contract.
If we ain't all free, ain't none of us free.
You're listening to Alabama's only union talk radio show, The Valley Labor Report, with Adam Keller and Jacob Morrison.
Hello, Tennessee Valley. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host and fellow agitator, Adam Keller, and we are broadcasting live online and on the radio from the heart of the Tennessee Valley, the Spice Radio studio in Huntsville, Alabama. Today, we dive into the state of Alabama's auto industry with Dev Wakely from Alabama Arise. We also take a look at some statements by a Louisiana sheriff that are going viral again, that are sort of instructive for our politics here in Alabama. We've got lots of updates from Southern Labor, all that and more on today's program. If you want to be part of the show today, we've got a phone number and the line is open. You can give us a call at 844-899 8857. That is 844-899 TVLR. You can also leave a voicemail throughout the week. We can no longer accept texts at that number. The service that we were using discontinued their texting service, so that's a big old bummer. But you can still give us a call and leave us a voicemail, 844-899-TVLR. If you haven't gotten enough of us by the time that we wrap up here on the radio, or if you just want to see what we're up to throughout the week, then you can find us anywhere you find anything online. We have a website, TVLR.fm, where you can find our written content as well as navigate to our merch store and donation portal. All of it powered by a union-designed website, unionized payment processing service, and a unionized web store. If you want to go directly to our donation portal, you can go to tvlr.fm/donate to make a one-time or recurring donation. You can go to tvlr.fm/store to buy our merch. We have some great shirts that are available. And you can find us, obviously, on all the social media places, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts, all at The Valley Labor Report. You can also go to patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report if you are more comfortable with that service. If you're a member of a union, then please do think about getting your local to sponsor the show. You can reach out to us for more details on that. We could not do the program without our union sponsors.
Hey, y'all, let me add a disclaimer that any viewpoints or opinions expressed in this program belong solely to their author and do not necessarily represent any organization or sponsor. We welcome all of our listeners, whether you're on YouTube, Facebook, Unclaimed Mysteries Internet Radio, WVNN, WZZA, WHIV, or through your favorite podcast app. We are proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network and encourage our listeners to check that out. And as most of you know, we are not media professionals, just some diehard unionists who believe that Alabama and the South's labor movement and working class deserve a bigger platform. We're hoping this project can make a difference on that front, and we could not do it without you. We want to thank everyone for tuning in. Whether you're a loyal fan or first-time listener, we really appreciate you spending some time with us this morning.
With that being said, we're going to jump right into last week in Southern Labor. We've got a 2-week roundup since last year we did a sort of year in review for Southern Labor. So this is what workers in the U.S. South and the American colonies were up to from January 5th to the 19th. Lots of new campaigns. Workers at Mercedes in Tuscaloosa announced that they reached 30% cards signed with the UAW and have gone public with their union campaign. campaign. They've continued to stay loud, responding to Governor Ivey's attacks on them, writing an article and making a video about how they are organizing. That video can be found on Twitter on the UAW's page, and the article can be found at labornotes.org. Workers at Hyundai in Montgomery, Alabama, held a forum about unionization with the UAW. That is their first foray into the public with their campaign. Workers, likely pushed by their employer, filed a petition to decertify the Automotive, Petroleum, and Allied Industries Employees Local 618 as the union representing the 4 workers at Gray's Auto Service in Richmond Heights, Missouri, with the help of the National Right to Work Freaks. 2 workers at United Rentals in O'Fallon, Missouri, filed a petition to hold a union election with the Teamsters, Local 600. 111 workers at Mary's Center, a medical center in Washington, D.C., filed a petition to hold a union election with 1199 SEIU, United Healthcare Workers East. 30 workers from the Earth Dispensary in Raytown, Missouri, filed a petition to hold a union election with United Food and Commercial Workers, UFCW, Local 2. 8 workers at R.J. Stab Stone Company in Florida, in Newberry, Florida, filed a petition to hold a union election with the International Union of Bricklayers and Allied Craft Workers, IUBAC, Local 8. 7 workers at Wells Fargo in Virginia Beach, Virginia, filed a petition to hold a union election with Wells Fargo Workers United, an affiliate of the Communication Workers of America, CWA. The employer filed a petition for a union election after a majority of the 50 workers at CQ Roll Call demonstrated support for a unionization with the Washington Baltimore News Guild, Local 32035. 10 workers at MDV Spartan Nash, a wholesale distributor for U.S. Army commissaries in Norfolk, Virginia, filed a petition to hold a union election with the Teamsters, Local 822. 20 workers at Starbucks in New Orleans, Louisiana, filed a petition to hold a union election with Starbucks Workers United. 17 workers at New Era Incorporated's manufacturing facility in Clarksville, Tennessee, New Era is a cookware company, filed a petition to hold a union election with the United Steelworkers, USW. 44 workers at OXDIA LLC Dispensary in Kansas City, Missouri, filed a petition to hold a union election with the Teamsters, Local 955. 20 security guards at Christus Health in Beaumont, Texas, filed a petition to hold a union election with the United Federation of Law Enforcement Officers Security and Police Benevolent Association. 4 workers at the American Red Cross in Douglasville, Georgia, filed a petition to hold a union election with USW Local 254. 12 workers at All Points Logistics in North Merritt Island, Florida, filed a petition to hold a union election with the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, IBEW, Local 2088. And 6 workers at Leidos Incorporated, an IT company in the same city, North Merritt Island, Florida, filed a petition to hold a union election with IBEW, Local 2088. 3 workers at Valero Refining Company in Memphis, Tennessee, filed a petition to hold a union election with the USW. And 14 workers at Graves Minamaker Foods Transportation in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, filed a petition to hold a union election with the Teamsters, Local 886. The employer filed for a union election after a majority of the 27 workers at Panel Systems in Woodbridge, Virginia, demonstrated support for a unionization with the Construction and Master Laborers, Local 11, which is an affiliate of the Laborers International Union of North America, LIUNA. 30 workers at Giant Resource Recovery in Harleyville, South Carolina, filed a petition to hold a union election with USW, and the employer filed for a union election after a majority of the 83 workers at Glancy Surface Mining in Wharton, West Virginia, demonstrated support for unionization with the United Mine Workers of America, UMWA, Local 1503. We had one campaign update. According to Sean Fain's recent live stream, Volkswagen workers in Chattanooga have hit 50% cards signed with the UAW. They are having a rally this weekend. In election results, after filing a petition to hold a union election with the National Labor Union during this period, the 8 workers at the Joint Employers of Wiener King of Cumberland County, doing business as Wiener Works, and Express Employment Professionals withdrew their petition for a union election. And a pretty strange case here, a bargaining unit of 1 employee filed a petition to decertify the International Union of Operating Engineers, IUOE, Local 465, as the union representing this person at Cargill in Fayetteville, North Carolina. And then this person, after presumably changing their mind, withdrew that request to decertify the union, to hold a decertification election. So strange case there. The petition to decertify Workers United as the union representing the 12 workers at Adventis Corporation in Petersburg, Virginia was withdrawn. The union remains. The petition to hold a union election with CWA at Meow Wolf and Artist Collective in Grapevine, Texas was withdrawn, as was the petition to hold a union election with UFCW Local 655 at CBD Kratom in St. Louis, Missouri. The petition to hold a union election with CWA at Lake Michigan Credit Union in Bonita Springs, Florida was withdrawn. 18 workers at Starbucks in Baton Rouge, Louisiana voted in favor of unionization with Starbucks Workers United 10-4. 11 workers at Wolf Creek Federal Services in Huntsville, Alabama, the pipe fitters and sheet metal workers, voted unanimously in favor of unionization with the Plumbers and Steam Fitters Union, UA Local 760. 16 workers at Wolf Creek Federal Services in Huntsville, Alabama, this time the electricians and carpenters, also voted in favor of unionization, this time with the IBEW Local 558. 70 workers at Odgefell Terminals, Houston in Seabrook, Texas, voted unanimously in favor of unionization with the Teamsters Local 175. 17 workers at Darling Ingredients in Grapeland, Texas, voted 11-5 in favor of unionization with the Teamsters Local 745. 3 workers at Alliance Mobile, an AT&T subsidiary in Bristol, Virginia, voted unanimously in favor of unionization with the CWA, as did 3 workers at another location in Kingsport, Tennessee. 55 workers at Evonik Corporation in Little Rock, Arkansas, voted 14-33 against unionization with the USW. 3 workers at the Harris County Democratic Party voted 1-2 against unionization with the United Professional Organizers. 226 workers at Ascension Seton Medical Center, Austin, in Austin, Texas, voted 120-5 in favor of unionization with the National Nurses United. 3 workers at Amentum Services in Springfield, Virginia, voted unanimously in favor of unionization with the IUE Local 99. 75 workers at Bimbo Services, a bakery in Valdesta, Georgia, voted against unionization with the UFCW Local 1996, and 5 security guards at Paragon Systems in Atlanta, Georgia, voted unanimously in favor of unionization with the United Federation of Law Enforcement Officers, Security and Police Benevolent Association. And rounding up election results, 25 security guards at KR Contracting in Vienna, Virginia, voted 2-0 in favor of unionization with the National Capital Union for Security Officers. Looks like I got 2 filings mixed up, and 70 workers at Odgefell Terminals in Houston and Seabrook, Texas, voted against unionization with USW Local 1327, and 6 workers at Top Drilling Corporation in Yawkey, West Virginia, voted unanimously in favor of unionization with Teamsters Local 175. Sorry about that mix-up. Some strikes and bargaining updates. Passenger service workers at American Airlines, jointly represented by the CWA IBT Association, that's the Communication Workers of America, and the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, have voted by a 3-1 margin to ratify a groundbreaking, according to the union, 5-year agreement that includes an average 20% raise immediately on ratification. Richmond City, Virginia workers who recently unionized with the Service Employees International Union Local 512 reached a tentative agreement and later ratified it. This is their first ever contract. The contract includes an 11% pay increase over the 3-year term and implements a wide range of benefits typical in many union contracts, like just cause discipline, time and a half for overtime, and 17 paid holidays. Newly unionized Teamsters at DHL in Kentucky ratified a contract by 98% after a 12-day strike by 1,100 members. The contract includes an immediate $2 an hour raise with a total of $5 an hour raise over the 3-year contract. It also doubles the company's 401k contributions, establishes a worker safety committee, and requires DHL to pay all healthcare premiums. In politics and legislation, President Joe Biden visited the state of North Carolina last week and was greeted with a rebuke from UE Local 150 President Sakia Royale, with her saying Bidenomics is money to corporations to create low-wage, non-union jobs while prioritizing money for war, including $105 billion to make weapons for Israel and Ukraine. We need money for workers' needs, not war and corporate profits. UE Local 150 represents public service workers in North Carolina state and municipal government. Alabama's Republican House Speaker alluded to the potential for Medicaid expansion as long as it is with a, quote, privatized approach, unquote, with positive comments about Arkansas's Medicaid expansion, which diverts federal dollars to subsidize private insurance instead of actually expanding Medicaid. The Communication Workers of America, CWA, are urging the passage of the Affordable Connectivity Program Extension Act in Congress to continue the expansion of high-speed internet to the 22 million families being helped by the program now. The Department of Labor announced a final rule aimed at ending worker misclassification. And we had a couple of internal union affairs updates. A group of minor league football players have officially launched a decertification petition to oust the United Steelworkers as their union, representing the players at the newly merged United States Football League and XFL. The decertification drive for the rural carriers failed to gain enough signatures during the allotted time, so that threat is over, but discontent among the rank and file remains. This could be an opportunity for leadership to change course were they so inclined. That's going to wrap it up for last week in Southern Labor. We are going to take a break, and we're going to be right back with Alabama Arises worker policy advocate Dev Wakely to talk about his recent report about Alabama's auto industry.
Benefit Architects has proudly supported union members and union-made products for over 35 years. If you are a federal employee and an AFGE member, you're eligible for hundreds of dollars in money-saving benefits, including group life insurance, dental insurance, and AFLAC insurance. Additionally, if you're a union member but don't work for the federal government, you can still qualify for several of these money-saving policies. So give Tate Cure a call at 256-215-6769 for details and to enroll. Again, that is Tate Cure at 256-215-6769.
In Alabama, more than 200,000 of our friends and family members are living without health care coverage. Often folks can't stay healthy enough even to keep their jobs. We can fix this. It's time for us to find a way to close the health care coverage gap so that people can remain at work. Let's make this a priority. Let's close this gap and cover Alabama. To learn more and how you can help, visit coveralabama.org.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for the Valley Labor Report comes from the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers Union. Learn more by visiting www.ifpte.org.
Attention union members, membership organizations, podcasters, or anyone with a payment processing need. The future is here, and your organization needs to be prepared by working with Unionly. With Unionly, your union or organization can take payments on a mobile device, eliminating processing fees, giving you a better price than other payment processing methods, while at the same time supporting a union-friendly business with a specialized skill set to meet your needs. Your members will thank you when they pay their dues at their convenience without waiting in line to deposit cash or check. Start preparing for the future today by calling 206-595-8631 or visiting unionly.io.
Are you looking for a better future, a career that can have you set for life, and to be a part of something that's bigger than yourself? If you are, then consider a skilled trades apprenticeship with the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades. The work of IUPAT is all around us, from the industrial painters who work on the bridges to drywall finishers, floor coverers, the glazers who install the glass in our skylines, and so much more. With an IUPAT apprenticeship, you earn while you learn and receive benefits while learning the trade, including a pension. We provide world-class education free of charge. That's right, no student debt. Our starting salaries for apprentices that graduate is above the national median salary with benefits for entire families. And you have the flexibility to take your trade wherever you'd like in the country to work. IUPAT District Council 77 covers our entire region, so give Adam Booth a call at 205-603-3142 for more information. Again, that phone number is 205-603-3142. Come build a better future with us today and join IUPAT.
I'm attorney Tommy Sinyard. When you've been injured and need help, you need a lawyer who's with you.
Sinyard Law. You need attorneys always available to take care of you. Sinyard Law.
And keep you in the loop. It's your case. You need to know what's happening.
Sinyard Law. And never a charge to meet with us to evaluate your case. Sinyard Law.
A new firm, but an old name. One that will stay with you every step of the way.
Sinyard Law. The name with proven results.
Support for this program is provided by the International Association for Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local Lodge 44 in Decatur, Alabama. Learn more at iamaw44.org.
Come all you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Labor creates all wealth should go to labor, and you are listening to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison here with Adam Keller. Appreciate everybody tuning in. We've got 25 people watching us on YouTube right now and only 11 likes on the stream. Let's get those numbers up, folks. Like the stream if you haven't, subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and appreciate everybody last week who listens to us on Spotify, giving us a 5-star rating on the app. We now officially have more 5-star ratings than several other large podcasts, including The Dale Jackson Show, including America's Workforce, including the Alabama Political Reporters podcast, Alabama Politics This Week. So now we've got to set our sights on Apple Podcasts. So, folks, if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, then please give us a 5-star rating. Take like 2 seconds. I know that there's a bunch of y'all that listen to us on Apple Podcasts, but for some reason the percentage of people who are rating us on podcasts is not as high on Apple. Is not as high as it is on Spotify. So if you're listening to this right now on Apple, take 2 seconds, give us a 5-star rating, please, and thank you. Appreciate everybody hanging out with us in the chat. Infinite Content, good to see you. Glad you're feeling a little bit better after your grandmother's passing. Adam S, good morning. Left is best. Good morning. Yeah, the weather is terrible here. The weather is awful, but nevertheless, we trudge onward, and right now we have Dev Wakely on the line from Alabama Arise. He is the worker policy advocate, and he recently authored a report on the state of Alabama's auto industry. Dev, welcome to the program.
Well, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you back. So can you talk to us about the impetus for this report? What was it that made you want to survey, the state of Alabama's auto industry at this time?
Well, the industry has been really present in the state for around 30 years in some respect. The plants haven't been up and running quite that long, but the deals to ink the massive corporate subsidies to lure the industry here were put in place about 30 years ago. So we thought it'd be time to do a good sort of look back to see whether the promises of the industry really came to fruition or not. Particularly right now, particularly right now, with auto manufacturing as a major part of industry in the state, and with the state of auto manufacturing nationally being in a real flux period where some real clawbacks and advantages can be gained for the workers, it makes perfect sense to be looking at it in the state right now.
I think so. I think that makes a lot of sense. Can you tell us, you mentioned that there's been a lot of subsidies. What is the scale of subsidies that's going to these companies from Alabama's public coffers?
I think the best way to describe it would be jaw-dropping. $1.6 billion in public funds have been used to lure these companies here. And one of the things that we found when researching this is that a lot of public dollars aren't really efficiently used. The better way to use public money to make industry want to be present in a state is to build out an economic infrastructure with a stable, high-wage, educated workforce base, not to just give them gobs of cash, which is what the state's decision has been largely.
And, so when a lot of times when people make purchases, there are strings attached. There are warranties. There are, if I give you, this money as an individual buying a product or service, and for some reason, by your own fault, the good or service does not meet the expectations that you set for me, then I have recourse to get my money back, right? So presumably, Alabama being so, controlled for, the last 100 years by quote unquote small government people, whether they were Democrats or Republicans, it's always been small government types, conservative types. Presumably Alabama was, we put in really good checks and balances when we gave this, hundreds of millions of dollars to these corporations, because this is the public's money and we've got to treat it with care. We've got to be very judicious with how we expend this money. So obviously Alabama has some strings attached to this money, right?
Oh, those strings are gossamer strands, man. The accountability mechanisms for those massive checks that the state basically wrote to these companies are practically non-existent. Very few companies deal with any sort of consequence for failing to meet, and the ones that do so via their own reporting. There's practically no monitoring. There are practically no meaningful wage standards. This is free money to the companies that don't really have to make good on any promises they make about wage quality, about job quality, about economic impact.
And so, that lack of strings, which again is just very strange, since, we're always told that the reason that we have to rein in public spending on services like Medicare and Social Security is because, we got to be responsible with our money. And so it's strange to me that these same people are just giving money for free without any strings attached to corporations. There might be something instructive there for the listener. So that lack of strings has really led to, you found, really led to a deterioration of this industry in certain very meaningful respects over the last 30 years. Can you explain that for us?
Sure. I'll lead with a big one. Alabama workers get much less pay for doing the exact same work as is done in other states. And that's because there's no wage standard that matches the national prevailing wage for auto manufacturing jobs in these incentive agreements. And that's huge. And we're talking about states that have similar costs of living to Alabama too. I mean, if you look at the Michigan standards, it costs almost the exact same to live in Michigan as it does in Alabama. Groceries are pretty much the same price, and they don't have a grocery tax. Gas prices are fairly similar. It costs ever so slightly less to buy a house in the Detroit MSA than it does in the Birmingham MSA. Wow. So it costs the exact same amount to live in most of Michigan as it does in Alabama. But Alabama auto workers get about $15,000 less a year to do the exact same work with the exact same codes. It's indefensible, and all it does is make Alabama workers less economically stable and less able to stand on their own feet. It's just further exploitation. That's the only way to describe it.
And that's always been the case, and in fact that's been a part of the pitch. There were a few different sides to this pitch that Alabama politicians and public leaders were making to these companies. And one was, we're going to give you all this free money, no strings attached at all. You can just have it if you come here. And then the second one was that the workers here are more docile, easily exploitable. You can pay them less, you can treat them worse. That's always been the arrangement. Right. But your report actually stunningly laid out how Alabama workers today are worse off. Alabama auto workers today are worse off than Alabama auto workers 20 years ago. Can you talk to us about that progression or regression in this case?
Sure. One of the things that we saw that was really, really stark was a sort of regression to the mean. Now, these jobs were sold to the public as being higher quality manufacturing jobs. But that's becoming less and less true over time. So the real wages in the auto sector have been declining pretty precipitously over the last 20 years, to the point where we're seeing kind of a regression to the mean, to almost the overall manufacturing wage in the state. While the overall manufacturing wage has risen somewhat, the auto industry manufacturing wage has basically cratered, really.
So what was the, give us those numbers. What was the average manufacturing wage back in the early 2000s, and what was the average auto manufacturing wage in the early 2000s, and what was it for the latest data that you have in your report?
Oh, let's see here. Let me pull it up just to make sure I'm quoting correctly here. Well, first off, let me give you the differential wages across the state. The Michigan standard auto industry wage is the median is $80,500, and the Alabama in 2019 was $64,600. So 15 grand less for the exact same living. And let's see here.
And while you're looking that up, it's worth noting that $65,000 is the total average salary, not for a 40-hour work week, but for just how much, that's just how much they got hours of work irrespective, right? So, a lot of these people, $65,000, that sounds like a reasonable amount of money if all you're working is 40 hours a week. But by and large, that is not the case in Alabama's auto industry. And from talking to the people that I have in the auto industry, and this is reflected also in your report, that has become much the same with the wages. The wages have been falling since the early 2000s, while the hours worked have been increasing since the early 2000s. I spoke to some Mercedes workers last week, and they said that, when they started working there 20 years ago, a lot of these people who were at the center of the UAW campaign at Mercedes, they said that by and large, it was like a normal work week. They worked 40 hours and they went home. Sometimes they worked a little more, but by and large, it was 40 hours. And today, the expectation, especially of new hires, is sometimes 6/12s, which is bonkers. Jeez. Right? And so then so that's who we're looking at, this population of people who are sometimes, in many instances, working 6/12s, making $65,000 a year. And that's a pittance when you're talking about 70 hours, 80 hours a week instead of 40.
Yeah, and you're spot on about the massive amounts of overtime. To 2019 specifically, too, was a period where just mandatory overtime was shot through the sector in the state. And one of the things that struck me about the interviews I conducted with folks working primarily at Mercedes at this point was the lack of notice they get. They would often be told that they had to come in the next day. It really wrecked a lot of people's outside of work lives. And it made it impossible to actually plan your own life around what you might be forced to do on very short notice.
Right.
That was a common refrain. The lack of scheduling notice and the lack of worker input into that was a major issue for pretty much everyone I talked to.
Right. One of the animating factors for one person, at least, that I talked to at Mercedes was that they've got this company handbook. This is the rules that the company has set for itself, and and so one of those rules is we're not going to make you work mandatory Saturday if we don't tell you before Thursday. Right? So you can't be told on Friday as you're leaving, oh, by the way, you have to come in tomorrow, supposedly. And, if you're kind of catching the tone of my voice, you will have guessed that they break that rule in their policy handbook. And so when that rule was broken one of these times, there was a group of workers that went to HR and said, and pointed to the book, said, Look, right here, you said you're not going to do this to me, and you're asking me to come in tomorrow, and I didn't have the notice that you said you were going to give me. And so then HR pointed to this other part of the book that says, these rules are subject to change at any time for any reason by management. Right? So it's meaningless. It's totally meaningless, these handbooks. And like you said, it, without notice, without reason, without provocation, any of it can change for better or for worse. And in most cases, for worse.
Yeah, it is a lot of for worse. And that includes some disciplinary procedures too. Recently, I was talking to the folks at Mercedes about the new hires and the way that, if you're conspiratorially minded, it looks like they see some significant work organizing coming down the pipeline and want the chance to remove any worker guardrails or safeguards for worker input into disciplinary procedures early on. So if they see somebody who's a pro-union, they can just get them out in a hurry.
Right.
And I think that's a pretty good way of looking at it. I think that eliminating disciplinary procedures for people that were long-standing too, for folks who were in their first 6 months of the hiring process and onboarding, looks just like a management power grab.
Right. And so those the numbers from 2002 to 2005, I can't remember them off the top of my head, the specific wages, but the delta was 11% in your report, right? Alabama auto workers in 2019 compared to Alabama auto workers in 2002 make 11% less.
Almost $8,000 lower in real wages. So $7,700 and some change less over the course of a year. It's brutal. That is a brutal figure. There's no other way to describe it. And it's not the way to. It's caused a long-term shift in the way that a lot of the workers in the sector view employment. So I was talking with some of the guys who've been at these plants for 20 years or so, and well, they're folks who were offered multiple buyout opportunities because the companies decided that they wanted a newer, a younger workforce.
Right.
And the young folks come in and they don't view a job at Mercedes or a job at Hyundai or a job at Honda or Toyota as a career anymore. Right. It is a place for a couple of years to stop off because you can't build a life on it anymore. You could build economic stability at the wages that were offered in, say, 2002, 2005, and you flat out can't do it anymore. And it's a real, it's a rational decision on the part of the workforce. If you're not at a place where you're going to be able to buy a house or to raise a family or to even pay for your basic needs, why would you stay there?
And it's worth explaining to people that when you say the average auto worker in 2019 makes $65,000, well, obviously that means 50% of auto workers are making less than that, but the numbers would be even more dire for new auto workers because since 2002 there have there's been a proliferation of multi-tier compensation packages. And so you've got at Mercedes, they actually just implemented 2-tier back in 2020. So your report wouldn't even capture kind of the damage that what Mercedes is doing. But so they have a second tier of permanent employment now that began in 2020 at Mercedes, and it's a full 20% lower And the top out is 20% lower. And right, so for these second tier of employees, there is no hope of ever getting to the first tier. It's like if you came in after 2020, then the top out pay that you have is a full 20% less than people who were hired in 2019. And obviously that's going to cause some amount of consternation between the workforce. But then on top of that, you've got, in other places you have multiple tiers, of permanent employment. And then you have temporary employment, which your report points out can be as much as 50% as much as what permanent employees make, right? So if you're going into the auto industry today, right now, you're not making $65,000 a year. You're just not. That's not in the cards for you.
I live down in Baldwin County, and there are workers doing auto manufacturing in multiple sectors of employment in this state who are making less per hour than fast food restaurants pay here. It is brutal. It is not the way. There is no way you can build a life on that amount of money.
And your report doesn't touch on this, but it is worth mentioning that we talked about the lawsuit that former inmates and civil rights groups and labor unions are bringing against the Alabama Department of Corrections for basically a modern-day convict leasing system. And auto industries were some of the alleged to be some of the top recipients of convicts by this leasing program, as well as we have seen multiple instances of child labor at these auto industries that, again, we are paying hundreds of millions of dollars to be here. The last thing that I'd like for you to expand on from your report is the safety issues. What can an auto worker expect by way of safety when they go work for one of these companies?
What you can expect is for that line to never stop. And that includes folks getting pinned to machines. It doesn't stop for that. It doesn't stop when somebody gets a hand stuck in a machine. And that happens. And it doesn't stop when people die on the line either. So if you look at how these companies really value the people who are doing the work, and people they say they value, you see how they treat folks, and you can understand that that's just simply not the case. Multiple people have died on the line at Hyundai, according to their workers, and the line never stopped. There was an attempt to, one of the interviews I had with a guy at Mercedes talked about a guy getting pinned to a machine, getting his hand crushed, and they wanted to pull him out before medical got there. They wanted to pull his hand out so that they could get production started again, without any consideration of the medical reality, the fact that this guy might have a crushed artery or something that would cause him to bleed out on the line. The only concern was getting things running and getting that production quota, no matter what, and that includes the health and the lives of the workers who are actually doing it in the no matter what.
Right.
I'll tell you.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Sure. I will tell you that the way to prevent that, the way to ensure that is to organize, and I think the workers see that now. Right. We hear a lot about what the state of about Alabama values and Alabama solutions. Well, unionization looks like to me an Alabama solution. It's always been an Alabama value. My great grandfather was a steel worker. My father was a carpenter. I'm CWA, and the reality is that if you're talking about actual Alabamians, people who do work instead of people who take in massive checks for doing nothing, then unionization is an Alabama value. Alabama has actually even now a higher private sector unionization rate than most of our southern neighbors. And to say that unionization is something that we should keep out is not in keeping with Alabama history. And it certainly doesn't value Alabama workers.
That's absolutely correct. What are some of the safety numbers in Alabama's auto manufacturing sector compared to the country at large, and then to some some specific areas of the country, like Michigan, where unions have an even an even stronger hold on the auto industry than in the nation as a whole?
I'm going to totally dodge that question. I'm going to point something else out to you.
All right.
That the workers themselves say they are disincentivized from reporting injuries. So when you see auto industry numbers in the state of Alabama that look only a little bit worse than they do in Michigan, that's not the full story, because workers are actively dissuaded from filing injuries or from filing their injury reports for a number of reasons. If you're talking about reassignment away from a more lucrative position to a worse role, that happens. If you're talking about folks who claim workman's comp, rightfully so, who are forced to come in there to the office during their recovery period while they're injured and just spend all day in a different like filing role, that happens too. The companies make every effort to avoid simply treating injuries for their workers and responding to the safety concerns, which is, again, as we pointed out, another impetus toward unionization, because unions provide better safety results, and the numbers are stark about that.
Right. And their ability to do that is a result of, the low unionization rate in the auto industry right now in Alabama. And it's also the result of a lack of safety enforcement in the state of Alabama. Alabama has no state safety law for the private or public sector, and so that leaves the only safety inspectors to be the ones from the federal government. And so that leads to, this ability to get away with the lack of reporting. Alabama has a lower than national average injury rate across sectors, right? Across, not just the auto industry, but across sectors. Our reported injury rate is lower than the national average. And yet, our reported death on the job rate is literally the fourth highest in the nation. Right? And so, unless you were literally born yesterday, you understand that what that means is that there's a lot of stuff that's being unreported, and your interviews with with auto industry workers track with the data that we have, and the gaps in the data that we have for Alabama. And so I just wanted to point out some of these numbers for the in the comparisons to other states on the safety issues. You said in the report, by 2015, the chances of losing a finger or a limb in an Alabama parts factory was double the amputation risk nationally for the industry, 65% higher than in Michigan and 33% higher than in Ohio. So, this is just really, really, super unsafe, and the obvious response to that for the workers is to organize, because the government's not coming to save you. In fact, the government is attacking you. So, Dev, is there anything else that you wanted to make sure that you point out in this report before we let you go?
In the report?
Yes, in the report, or just generally comments on the Alabama auto industry.
Absolutely, I definitely want to. I want to talk about some of the rallies that we've seen recently in the mood of the workers, and that is the reality on the ground is that workers know now, after a long period of egregious corporate abuses, that the way to proceed is to unionize if they want a better life. And that reality has kind of differed a little bit than what we saw even as recently as a few years ago. The UAW campaign success nationally has translated to the state in terms of organizing, and you see a state power structure that realizes that that's happening. And that's why you're seeing the response you're seeing at the state government level. They're scared of worker power building in ways that haven't been realized for the past 30, 40, 50 years.
Right.
And frankly, in the state of Alabama ever. I feel comfortable saying that there is a broad cross-sector public understanding that the workers in the state have been getting a raw deal forever. And that's looking more and more like the power brokers and the corporate power structure of the state is going to have to make significant life-changing concessions on behalf of the workers.
Right. Dev Wakely, worker policy advocate with Alabama Arise. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Always glad to be here.
Absolutely. So we're going to stay on the theme of the Alabama auto industry for another little bit and talk to you about, or the auto industry in general, and talk to you about some of the updates that I alluded to in last week in Southern Labor. For one, we've got the huge update that Volkswagen workers have hit 50% card signed in Chattanooga. This is a very big deal. And now they legally have the option to go to management and request voluntary recognition and then file for a union election. And then if during the union election the employer is found to have violated labor law, then that would make way for a bargaining order by the NLRB under the new CMAX ruling. But that's not what the UAW is saying that their plan is. What they're going to do is ask for voluntary recognition after they hit 70% of cards signed. So they are well on their way to getting that done. And so they are holding a rally this weekend in Chattanooga to talk about, to support the unionization effort. And this is just very, very big news. In The Guardian, there was a recent article by Michael Sonato about the Volkswagen's auto push. And like we just finished talking about with Dev, a big part of the reason that, there are obviously a multitude of reasons, right, that auto workers right now are gung-ho about the prospects of organizing. But a big reason is just the instability and the inconsistency and the lack of respect that these auto companies have for their workers and their willingness to violate the flimsy rules that they have laid down for themselves as it relates to, mandatory overtime and then the implementation of multi-tier employment and compensation packages. All of this has really, in the past, there was more of an understanding by Southern auto workers that this is a good job. I've got it pretty good. I don't want to rock the boat, and everything is good, and I just want it to stay the way it is. And it hasn't stayed the way that it hasn't stayed that way. The auto industry in the South, just like we talked about in Alabama, the trend is region-wide. The auto industry has precipitously declined as it relates to working conditions for auto workers. And so, that is making the ground all the more fertile for organization. And these companies have no one to blame but themselves for for what's coming. So really excited to see some videos from that rally once they come out. I'm sure that it's going to be great. Also, new updates in Alabama. Hyundai workers have held a rally on MLK Day talking about unionization, answering questions. They had UAW folks there answering questions. They had Hyundai workers there answering questions about why they want to why they want to unionize. And so that is their first, public foray with their union campaign. That's a very big step. I don't think they've hit 30% card signed, but they have gone ahead and, they're being public with their organizing campaign. And then in Mercedes, they hit 30% card signed a while back, and Governor Ivey immediately came out attacking them, saying that they are, the implication is they are either out-of-state interests or they are so stupid as to be, being controlled by out-of-state interests. And they don't know what's best for them, right? Because they have, as Kay Ivey says, high paid, and they're highly paid and highly skilled. So why do they need organization, right? And so the workers that are part of that campaign have not taken that lying down. They released a video where a lot of them talk about how this is really a worker-led organizing campaign. And from going down to Tuscaloosa myself and talking to these folks, that by all indications that does seem to be the case. I went into the UAW office that's down there. I didn't see any UAW staff. I saw a lot of Mercedes workers that are there talking about the campaign and talking about how they are operating the campaign and why they want to be part of the campaign. So it's, obviously not, out-of-state special interests. They are not out-of-state special interests, and they are not being manipulated by out-of-state special interests. These are Alabama workers organizing collectively for, for their own gain and for the gain of their fellow workers and their community and their family. What's interesting is that a lot of the organizing, the out front stuff is being done by people who remember, quote unquote, the good old days, right? Of the people that I talked to, like 75% of them had been there for more than 20 years at this Mercedes plant. And then the rest of them had been there for over 10 years, right? And so they're wanting to be more out front because, they're more kind of secure in their employment than some people who have been there for less time. And they want to extend the benefits and the wages and everything that they have to the rest of the people in the plant. And then they also want to bring their compensation packages up to par with, what the UAW has across the country. Because there's no reason for them to be doing the same work and getting, tens of thousands of dollars less in total compensation. It's absolutely unjust and unnecessary because the money is there, right? As if you take a look at any of the profits of any of these companies, they're all in record profit mode. And amid these record profits, particularly galling at Mercedes, I think, is amid these record profits is when they instituted their second tier of employment. And so that, made people all the more angry that this is the time that you're choosing to do this. You're making more money than you ever have, and now you're choosing to pay people 20% less for no reason.
Right.
So really looking forward to continuing to hear updates and give them to y'all. I would recommend checking out Jeremy Kimbrell's article in Labor Notes. We threw out the old playbook, the new union drive at Mercedes. It's in labornotes.org. It's a really good article about how they are going about organizing and how, the effort is worker-led, how it's not staff-driven, and some of the tactics that they're using. So very interesting article and could be instructive for people that are in similar situations.
Yeah, I wanted to jump in here real quick to echo that. I really recommend that article. Lots of good organizing advice. I think what you encountered in your interviews last weekend, what we're seeing is definitely a different approach than what has not worked in the past with some of these organizing campaigns in the South. And I also wanted to point out that it's very appropriate that the workers were rallying on MLK Day because, there are a lot of disparities in this auto industry, right? And something we didn't touch on with Dev, but is mentioned in the report, is that Black auto workers in Alabama on average received 83 cents for every dollar that a white auto worker received in 2019. It was worse for Hispanic workers, 78 cents per dollar, and even worse for women who earned just 73 cents for every dollar that men earned. And keep in mind, again, that, Alabama auto workers' pay is below that of other states, and it is below that of what it used to be. Right. So it's just, continued disparities, continued decline. And it's no surprise that workers are interested in organizing. And I think there's a lot of reasons behind that, as you alluded to. And some of it, I think, is there is a general militancy among working people coming out of the pandemic that, we haven't seen in some time. And I think the bold leadership in UAW and the renewed democratic leadership inside the union, I think that is definitely bolstering these efforts. And I think sometimes momentum, right? Getting wins, seeing wins, just like we saw with Starbucks, right? Once a few Starbucks started doing it, it caught on like wildfire. And now we're at hundreds of stores. once the UAW pulled off their stand-up strike and won significant gains in these contracts with the big three, I think it gave a lot of juice to people. It gave energy, right? And that momentum, it's hard to quantify, but I think it's really important when it comes to organizing.
Absolutely. All right, folks, we're going to go ahead and head to a break. We're going to be right back, and we have an absolutely galling clip from a Louisiana sheriff that is kind of instructive to Alabama's prison labor situation. And then we're going to talk about Boss Watch and maybe some other stuff if we've got time. Don't go anywhere, folks. You're listening to the Valley Labor Report.
In Alabama, more than 200,000 of our friends and neighbors are living without health care coverage. Often folks can't stay healthy enough to keep their jobs. We need to fix this. Let's close the health care coverage gap. To learn more, visit coveralabama.org.
Support for this program also comes from the Iron Workers, Local 477. So if you are looking for contractors with lower than average EMR and TRIR, they tell me that if you need to know what those mean, then you will. Or if you need to supplement a workforce at any level for any amount of time, short or long term, if you need iron workers that come trained and certified at no extra cost, or if you need workers from superintendent down to general laborer, and you're looking to start work on a project, or you're unhappy with your current contractor situation, you need to call my friend Jeb Miles with the Ironworkers Local 477. They only work with the best in the business, vetted contractors, and can do all kinds of jobs from roofing to steel and bridge erection, from welding to heavy rigging, from structural repairs to machinery alignment, and much more. They supply manpower on 4 of the 5 largest projects in North Alabama, so you know they're legit. If you need good quality, safe, efficient, diligent, and knowledgeable workers on your job, then you need the Ironworkers Local 477. Call Jeb Miles at 256-383-3334 or via email at local477@bellsouth.net, and make sure you tell them that you heard about them on the Valley Labor Report.
We're the nurses, firefighters, and claims representatives that help keep our government services running. We respond to natural disasters. We care for our nation's veterans, and we investigate discrimination in the workplace. We are federal and D.C. government workers, and we are proud to serve the American people. Working in more than 70 agencies across the government, we know we can fulfill our mission because our union has our back. Learn more at afge.org. Paid for by the American Federation of Government Employees, AFL-CIO.
The Laborers International Union of North America, Local 366, is proudly recruiting North Alabama workers to work construction and nuclear plant maintenance. If you're interested, please contact Donna at their training center to start the process. That phone number is 256-415-7452. Again, that phone number is 256-415-7452. No experience is needed. Free training is offered, but you must be able to pass a background check and a drug test. Local hiring that grows our community with good-paying jobs that have benefits is their mission. Live better, work union, Local 366, feel the power.
Support for this program also comes from the Mid-South Council of Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union. Learn more at rwdsu.info.
I'm attorney Tommy Sinyard. When you've been injured and need help, you need a lawyer who's with you.
Sinyard Law. You need attorneys always available to take care of you. Sinyard Law.
And keep you in the loop. It's your case. You need to know what's happening.
Sinyard Law. And never a charge to meet with us to evaluate your case. Sinyard Law.
A new firm, but an old name. One that will stay with you every step of the way.
Sinyard Law. The name with proven results.
As labor union members, we face our share of challenges in the workplace. But today, I want to talk about a different kind of challenge, the climate crisis. We've all seen the fury of Mother Nature, the storms that can turn lives upside down in an instant. That's why Hometown Action is launching our Climate Protection Project. We're heading out to 10 rural communities, listening to local folks, and taking action with them to protect communities impacted by climate disasters. And we need you, our union brothers and sisters, to join us. Together, we'll make a difference. Our strength on the job is undeniable, and now it's time to put that strength to work for the planet. Let's protect our communities, our families, and our future. Visit hometownaction.org today and sign up to volunteer for the Climate Protection Canvas.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell. How the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Alabama's only union talk radio show. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host Adam Keller. Folks, if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, give us a 5-star rating. All right? Okay. We have over 30 people watching us on YouTube and only 28 likes. If you could, and if you haven't, please like the stream, subscribe to the channel. Appreciate everybody hanging out with us in the chat. We have Steve from Atlanta, the Stagehands Union Local 600. Been checking out the show lately, and it's been great. Appreciate your listening. Definitely means a lot. Mark, good morning. That Dude Tank, UAW Local 2250, saying that he's on mandatory 6 days this week here in GM Wentzville. Sorry to hear that. That's no fun. No fun at all. Infinite Content responding to the wage differential between Alabama auto workers and other auto workers, talking about how that can be easily over $500,000 in a lifetime of auto industry work, and indeed that is the case. Eric says if Alabama's new football coach needs a contract, Mercedes workers need a contract. Indeed, that's a good point. Stidham Family Gospel says it's absolutely a benefit in the UAW. We have our own full-time safety personnel on the floor all day. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There is no doubt that makes a huge difference in, the safety on these workplaces. Stidham Family Gospel elaborates, mandatory overtime and vacation time abuse can absolutely be regulated with the CWA. Yeah. Yep, absolutely. Dev points out that video where the Mercedes auto workers responded to Kay Ivey was chock full of Southern accents. Indeed. And I actually was able to talk to basically everyone in that video, and they all told me how they all grew up either, right around there in Alabama or somewhere else in the South. I didn't talk to not one single Yankee, okay? All right. Not nary a one of them. So, Adam, we've got this clip from a Louisiana sheriff that is really pretty wild, kind of saying the quiet part out loud kind of stuff. Can you remind us, just give us a quick overview of the prison labor lawsuit that is underway right now in Alabama?
Yeah, sure thing. Last month, a bombshell lawsuit was filed involving current and former incarcerated workers alongside a civil rights nonprofit and a couple labor unions, the Union of Southern Service Workers, as well as the RWDSU Mid-South Council, which that's important, that kind of coalition coming together. But the lawsuit is regarding what they are alleging is modern day convict lease labor in our prison systems. It's worth noting that Alabama has one of the highest incarceration rates in the country, which means we lock up more people inside of our borders than almost anywhere on earth. It's also worth noting that Alabama's prison system is unconstitutional, according to the federal government. Literally every moment that it's in operation is a violation of the constitutional rights of the people inside. That is according to the Department of Justice. And so that's important context in understanding that thousands of inmates have been coerced into performing labor. And so you might imagine working inside the prisons, right? And that is happening. In some cases, prisoners are actually doing the work of correctional officers. right? But being paid $2 per day. Many of these workers are under that $2 per day pay rate, which was set back in 1927 and has not changed. Other workers were leased out to private industries, and we see a variety of private employers as well as public employers also involved in this. So some of the employers involved include fast food franchises like KFC and Wendy's and Burger King. There are components of the auto supply chain, including a company named SL Alabama, which you may recall from our previous coverage, is the same company, or one of the same companies in the Hyundai supply chain caught using migrant child labor. So this particular company was working incarcerated workers 11 to 12-hour shifts, 6 days a week. And the city of Montgomery, the city of Troy, the Alabama Department of Transportation, a Budweiser distributor, several poultry plants, right? So there were quite a few. In fact, the lawsuit alleges over 500 employers ultimately have been involved in this scheme. And the state of Alabama has profited some $350 million just in 2023 alone from the value created by this convict lease labor. Again, as I said, it's coerced, it's forced. Prisoners face repercussions if they do not go to work, even if they're sick, even if they're very ill, they face repercussions, right? And the guards will actually tell them, you've got to go make our 40%. And the 40% cut is what ADOC, the Alabama Department of Corrections, takes off the top of the check before any taxes, before deductions, before child support, before restitution. They're taking 40% right off the top. And then they are fining and fees. There's fines and fees and charges for essential services that you require, such as the transportation to and from work. There's the coercion that you face because the alternative, if you say no to the work release or the work programs, is to get put back into higher security facilities, which, as I said, are unconstitutionally cruel and violent. And so you're faced with a deadly choice, right? Go work yourself to the bone for pennies on a dollar, making profits for someone, both the state and private capitalists. Or you say no and you're locked up potentially in solitary confinement, or perhaps even worse, with a violent inmate population where, various forms of assault and abuse are highly prevalent and common.
A violent inmate population and a violent corrections officer population.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. The system itself is violent. Let me just clarify that. And so we see reports of deaths coming out of the system on a regular basis, various forms of shocking abuse, right? And so this is the choice that these incarcerated folks are given. And the lawsuit alleges that, like I said, this is modern day convict leasing, which if you're familiar with American history, you may recall that convict leasing really took off after the decline of Reconstruction in the South. And so from roughly 1875 or so until the 1920s, convict leasing was a major source of profit in the state of Alabama and in other places in the South. And in fact, the labor movement was instrumental in leading the fight against convict leasing. The United Mine Workers of America, UMWA, helped lead the fight to ban convict leasing here in Alabama in 1928, or at least so we thought.
Yeah. And so, and this is just one, and we're going to play this clip in just a second, but, the convict lease system is just one of the many ways that the prison system is detrimental not only to the people inside of it, but outside of it, because 95% of these people, 99% of them are going to come back out at some point. And so the question is, do you want them coming back out better than they went in or worse than they went in? And almost uniformly, the people that go into our prisons are coming out worse in one way or another, and it is because of the decisions of our leaders to do that, to make prison such a terrible place, because they have really a warped kind of system of morality, in my view. And also because of this, the mass incarceration system makes it even difficult to, adequately care for everybody in the prison system, because we cage more people than most states in this country, which cages more people than almost any country in the world. And so, to believe that that's a just system, right? I just want to underscore that to believe that it is just that we lock up so many people, you've got to believe that the American people are uniquely wicked and incapable of handling freedom. And so therefore we have to lock up so many of our people. Otherwise, we would not be able to maintain social order. Right? That's what it's a fundamentally anti-American view, the view that mass incarceration is necessary. It's fundamentally anti-American, and I have a different view of the American people. I don't believe that that the American people are so uniquely broken that we have to lock up, so many more of our sisters and brothers than anywhere else in the world. But with that out of the way, yeah.
I wanted to real quick point out a couple of other things that I've missed that are really worth highlighting with this, and provide a lot of important context to the clip you're going to play as well. One of which is that the Black population inside of the Alabama Department of Corrections is more than double the Black population in the state of Alabama, right? So such a huge disproportionate impact on Black men and women when it comes to mass incarceration here. And the other thing that is involved in this lawsuit, and is really, just shocking to think about, is that the lawsuit points out the decline in paroles that have been granted over the last few years. A shocking decline in paroles have been granted, particularly to Black inmates. And what the lawsuit is connecting the dots there to say, well, now we know why you're denying parole. It's because a lot of these people you're denying parole to are making you money, right? And there is a perverse profit incentive to keep people locked up, even after you've determined that they pose no safety risk, right? They are safe enough to go out and work unsupervised alongside the general public and make you money at a Hyundai supplier or at a fast food franchise, but not worthy of parole. And so that's why Attorney General Steve Marshall, Governor Kay Ivey, all of these folks are named in this lawsuit. They're being very quiet about this lawsuit, as you can imagine. But it is really an egregious, shocking thing that in the year 2024, these sort of practices are being widely used. $350 million. I mean, that would be roughly 8% of Alabama's general fund budget. Just the general fund overall, not specifically the Alabama Department of Corrections budget. So we're talking a significant amount of money here that's being made by a lot of different entities off the backs of incarcerated workers facing cruel, inhumane conditions.
Right. And so the lawsuit basically connects by implication, a potential reason for, the declining parole rate, and, they connect it by implication to the prison labor system. But this clip of a Louisiana sheriff from 2017, but it's kind of resurfaced and been going around Twitter, especially in, Alabama circles, because it explicitly lays out this reasoning in a different state, and this is almost certainly what people are saying behind closed doors in our state. Let's take a listen.
I don't want state prisoners, okay? They are a necessary evil to keep the doors open, that we keep a few or keep some out there. And that's the ones that you can work. That's the ones that can pick up trash, the work release programs. But guess what? Those are the ones that they're releasing. They're releasing some good ones that we use every day to wash cars, to change oil in our cars, to cook in the kitchens, to do all that where we save money. Well, they're going to let them out. The ones that we use in our work release program, they're going to let them out. And they're saying you can take a little worse criminal. It's been long said that we were the #1 leader in the United States for incarcerating criminals in our criminal justice system. Well, let's face it, somebody got to be number one, and we got some bad dudes around here. Now, I'm as compassionate a fella as you ever going to meet if somebody deserves it, if somebody works for it.
Yeah, so there you go. And he ends that with exactly what I said, a fundamentally anti-American, in his case, anti-Louisianan worldview. That, look, the reason that we lock up more human beings than any state in the country in Louisiana, in the country that locks up more human beings than anywhere else in the world, just because people in Louisiana are uniquely wicked and incapable of handling freedom. That's like, he just out and said it, right? Okay, so that's part of that. He is a uniquely he has a uniquely anti-American worldview, right? And then on top of that, he's talking about the prisoners as if it is an affront to him whether they come or go, because he explicitly says part of my reason for wanting to keep these people here is because they're actually good workers, right? They are actually productive laborers, and it saves me a lot of money to just have them do it for free instead of actually paying people, right? That's what he's saying explicitly. And I don't see how you don't hear that and think, oh, wow, this is like slavery, right? This is like slavery, and it's bad. And we shouldn't do it. He should be impeached. He should probably go to jail. And, a lot of his people that are in his prison should be let go and should be given reparations, frankly, right? Having to deal with this guy. I mean, just the warden of a wicked system.
Yeah, again, it's a perverse incentive that if you're profiting off of someone's labor, of course you don't want to give that away. Right. And so it is uniquely, I agree with you. I think it is an anti-American, anti-freedom kind of perspective. And it absolutely, there's a profit motive there. He's pointing to it. He says these are good workers. Otherwise, we might actually have to pay free world workers, right? A living wage and benefits and respect their rights a little bit. And so, like, for example, the city of Montgomery has saved $3 million in the use of convict lease labor that otherwise would be paid to city employees, people with rights, people with benefits, right? People who would pay taxes and spend their money at local businesses. And so there's such a cascading effect to bring it back to your point earlier. Most of us know someone impacted by the criminal justice system. It's hard not to in a place like Alabama. But even if you don't, or you don't have a close connection, we're all impacted as members of the working class. We're all impacted as participants in the workforce, as participants in the economy, right? As taxpayers. We all are directly impacted by this practice. And we all have to unite to say that this can't happen with our dollars, with our resources, in our name. And I applaud the Union of Southern Service Workers and RWDSU for taking a stand, because this is a historic mission of labor, right? To battle this kind of mega exploitation, whether it's the use of child labor, the exploitation of migrants, the exploitation of incarcerated workers. It is our job as a labor movement to fight against that and to build a broad working class coalition to fight against it effectively. So, we'll see what happens with this lawsuit. And I think the clip from the Louisiana sheriff is very instructive of the kind of mindset that we're dealing with when it comes to the people profiting from this system. And what we've got to do is remove the profit incentive to cage our neighbors. That's unacceptable.
Boss Watch is a segment that we do every week where we take a look at what bosses were up to in the South in the last week, because every night on the news you're going to see some poor soul's mugshot for this or that, various often, not super consequential crime. And yet, bosses are also guilty of many similar things, but often much worse, and you never see them getting arrested. There are no criminal penalties when bosses do the exact same things that workers do. And so we want to highlight that and do what we can to write that kind of media narrative. We're not going to have time for every single one of these stories that I have Adam and I have compiled for this week, but I wanted to make sure to get to two. The first one in Mississippi talks about the death of a child in a Mississippi poultry processing plant, Hattiesburg, Mississippi, where a 16-year-old was killed at work. This from the Department of Labor. For the second time in just over 2 years, a poultry processing plant in Hattiesburg has disregarded safety standards that have led to a worker's death, this time a 16-year-old sanitation worker who was pulled into a machine, federal safety investigators found. The U.S. Department of Labor's Occupational Safety and Health Administration found that on July 14th, a contract worker employed by Onan Staffing was performing a deep clean of the deboning area at the Marjack Poultry, Mississippi plant. While sanitizing the still energized machine, the teen was caught in the rotating shaft and sprockets and pulled in, sustaining fatal injuries. Investigators found that despite a manager's supervision in and around the area prior to and during the fatal incident, lockout-tagout procedures were not utilized to disconnect power to the machine, and a lockout-tagout device was not used to prevent the machine from unintentionally starting during the cleaning. OSHA cited Marjack Poultry with 14 serious and 3 other than serious violations after finding the company failed to ensure energy control procedures were used to prevent the unexpected startup of machines while employees performed sanitation, exposing workers to caught-in hazards. They failed to ensure employees used lockout-tagout devices. They failed to ensure an energy control procedure. They failed to ensure that the machinery retained guarding. They didn't cover open holes in electrical cabinets, and they did not prevent workers from using portable ladders incorrectly to gain access to elevated workspaces. So for all of that, OSHA proposed $212,000 in penalties, and just for background, the agency previously found that Marjack Poultry violated federal safety law when an employee's shirt was caught in a machine and they were pulled in, pinning their body against the support and the machine's carousel, resulting in fatal injuries. In addition to OSHA's investigation, the department's Wage and Hour Division has opened a child labor investigation, and the matter is currently pending. And, you know, people at the Alabama Policy Institute see stories like that, and they think, oh, the problem with this is that it's not legal for children to work in poultry plants. And that's what they have been saying explicitly in their new priority sheet, their new priority document for the Alabama legislature in 2024. Explicitly, they want to follow the trend of loosening child labor laws as we continue to see stories like this across the country where children are put in harm's way and sometimes killed to make some freak a profit. In Alabama, the U.S. Department of Labor has recovered $127,000 in back wages and liquidated damages for 22 workers at an aviation maintenance shop employed by a Dothan staffing company that misclassified them as independent contractors and denied them overtime wages. Investigators found that Lucero Aerospace Staffing Solutions paid workers straight-time rates for all hours worked and failed to pay the additional half-time rate required for hours over 40 in a work week. In addition, the employer failed to pay one worker at least the federal minimum wage of $7.25 an hour. Absolutely crazy stuff. So that's going to be it for us today on the radio, folks. We're going to be continuing the show for another hour and a half, online only. Find us on YouTube and Facebook at The Valley Labor Report. We are talking to a representative from the Teachers Union in Las Vegas about a new contract that they got and a new campaign that they are embarking on. We're going to be reacting to some other stuff in the second half of the show, so find us online and keep watching. But Adam, you had a couple of plugs that you wanted to make sure we got to.
Yeah, real quick, labornotes.org/events. Check out the trainings they have this month online. The Madison County Legislative Forum is going to be Monday night. That's the 22nd, 6:30 to 8:30. All the state reps and senators will be there. Show up at the Huntsville City Council chambers. You can sign up to speak by 6 o'clock. You can speak for 3 minutes. Hit me up if you're a union member and you want to show up and say something. The North Alabama Labor Council is having its meeting Tuesday night at 6 o'clock in Madison. I am doing a regional issue preview on Zoom with Alabama Rise on the 24th at 12 o'clock, talking about 2024 issue priorities. You can email me at adam@alarise.org. Also, email me if you're interested in coming to my advocacy training on January 29th at the downtown Huntsville Library from 5:30 to 7. If you think that Alabama could be better, should be better, and you want to know how to get involved, this training is for you. And let's see, I was on America's Workforce back on the 15th. Really enjoyed that. And Jacob and I were on the Real News Network yesterday recording an interview. So we'll definitely keep you posted on when that drops. And if you are on a college campus and you're interested in a labor event, hit us up.
All right, folks. See you in overtime. Okay, we're off the radio now. Appreciate everybody staying tuned. Like I said, we got some good stuff for you in the second half of the show. Have another clip, and really excited to talk to this person from the Clark County Education Association about their new contract for Las Vegas teachers. So stay tuned, folks. You are still listening to the Valley Labor Report. We will be right back with the second half of the show.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Folks, welcome back. You are still listening to the Valley Labor Report, Alabama's only union talk radio program. We are free from the shackles of the FCC censors, and we are now in overtime. So appreciate everybody staying tuned. We got some good stuff for you, but let's finish up. Let's finish up Boss Watch. Let's do that here at the top. Because there's some other stuff here in Boss Watch that I wanted to make sure that y'all that I told y'all. On the thieves from Alabama, there was something that I wanted to make sure to pass on some background information. In Alabama, the division, the Wage and Hour Division of the Department of Labor, has recovered more than $500,000 waiting to be claimed for some 1,500 workers, and offers a workers owed wages search tool that people can use to see if they are owed back wages collected by the agency. So workers who feel they may not be getting the wages they earned or are misclassified as independent contractors may contact a Wage and Hour Division representative in their state through a list and interactive online map on the agency's website. So check that out if you reckon that that maybe it's possible that your employer was one of the people that stole from people and are not getting any criminal charges, obviously. In Tennessee, the nation's largest Bojangles franchise owner, and this makes me really sad because I'm a big Bojangles fan. I don't know if...
Also a Bojangles fan, yes.
Yeah, I don't know if I've talked about this on the radio, but like Bojangles... got me through college. Like I would go there almost certainly an unhealthy amount because during college I could get a Cajun filet biscuit and an individual serving of Bo Rounds for like $5. Oh no, and a Cajun filet biscuit, individual serving of Bo Rounds, and a cinnamon biscuit for $5, dude. Holy.
Not anymore, brother.
Not anymore. No, I know, because I still get that same exact meal, and it is now like $7.68 or something. So still pretty cheap, but not $5 anymore. So anyway, now that I have glazed Bojangles,
let's tear them down.
Yeah, let's tear them down.
Now that you've built them up. Yes.
Yeah.
Great chicken biscuits.
Yeah, great chicken biscuits.
I can
unfortunately, made by children in some instances. So the largest Bojangles franchise owner will make enterprise-wide changes to improve working conditions for minor-aged employees in compliance with federal labor regulations at their 118 locations in Georgia, Kentucky, North Carolina, Ohio, South Carolina, and Tennessee. Hey! Not Alabama, so our Bojangles are fine, hopefully. After entering an enhanced compliance agreement with the U.S. Department of Labor, the agreement comes after investigators with the department's Wage and Hour Division found Bojangles of WNC LLC, based in Arden, North Carolina, violated federal child labor laws at a Bojangles location in Powell. This is the second time in less than 2 years that the division has cited the company for similar violations. Specifically, the division determined that Bojangles of WNC employed 13 children to work at the Powell restaurant after 7 p.m. between Labor Day and June 1st, more than 3 hours during a school day, and during school hours, all of which violated the child labor provisions of the Fair Labor Standards Act. In addition, the company employed 3 15-year-olds to use an oven for baking biscuits and a manual grease fryer, tasks the department has identified as hazardous for young workers. The agency assessed Bojangles with a $27,000 civil money penalty for allowing similar working hour violations as those identified in March 2022 at a Bojangles in Spartanburg, South Carolina. In that case, 16 minor-aged employees were affected, and the division assessed $11,000 in civil money penalties. Not very much for child abuse. Working people abuse children, we go to jail. As part of the agreement, Bojangles of WNC will take the following steps to ensure future compliance. They will stop 14 and 15-year-olds from using manual fryers or engaging in cooking activities in any of the occupations prohibited under the law. The employer will also post written notices on equipment not permitted for use by minor-aged employees in its stores. They will refrain from employing 14 and 15-year-olds to work outside of legally described hours, and they will distribute a copy of the child labor provisions of the FLSA to all current and future locations. Basically, they're gonna follow the law, they say. So here we go. I mean, just $27,000, man. 118 locations. This is just bizarre. In Florida, a 36-year-old mower operator drowned after the mower rolled over in a pond, pinning the worker underwater. Federal workplace safety inspectors determined the employer could have avoided the incident by following required safety measures outlined in the equipment operator's manual. An investigation into the July 4th, 2023 incident by the U.S. Department of Labor's Occupational Safety and Health Administration found the employee of TrueScapes Industries in Bradenton was riding a zero-turn lawnmower in a residential neighborhood when it tipped over into a water retention pond. Investigators learned the machine's rollover protection system was not engaged while operating on a sloping embankment near the pond, and the equipment was operated on a slope that exceeded the limitations defined in the equipment manual. OSHA cited the employer for one willful violation for not having a rollover protection system in use and for operating the equipment on a steep slope, and one serious violation for not providing potable water for drinking. OSHA proposed $166,000 in penalties. The agency cited TrueScapes after a similarly fatal incident in Bradenton in July of 2015. In that investigation, OSHA issued TrueScapes Industries 5 serious citations and proposed $18,000 in penalties. And this is something that's very funny, because this is the industry that those entrepreneurs that we talked to who had a podcast who stopped doing their podcast. They're like, landscaping people, and they were talking to us about how, we got to take so much risk because if one of our workers dies, then we'll get put under the jail. Obviously, this is not true. This company has killed not one but 2 people, and they're only facing fines. So pretty gross. Had several dishonorable mentions. The U.S. Department of Labor has recovered $47,000 in back wages and liquidated damages for 2 former employees of 2 separate Tennessee-based healthcare providers, WellPath LLC and Whites Creek Wellness, that violated their rights to protective leave under the Federal Family and Medical Leave Act. A global electric vehicle battery manufacturer, SK Battery America Incorporated, exposed employees at its Commerce, Georgia plant to serious and potentially disabling safety and health hazards at a U.S. Department of Labor workplace and safety investigation found. OSHA proposed $75,000 in penalties. U.S. Department of Labor Wage and Hour Division investigators found that 2 Myrtle Beach, Florida daycare facilities, both operated by Kids Paradise, failed to pay overtime for hours worked over 40 in a work week to 61 employees. As required by the Fair Labor Standards Act, the division recovered $47,000 in back wages for these 61 workers. The U.S. Department of Labor's Wage and Hour Division investigators found that Victoria Espinoza and Nora Carolon, owners of 2 North Florida restaurants, required some workers to arrive before the restaurant opened to prep for the day's shift and to clean at the end of their shifts after clocking out for the day. By doing so, they committed a minimum wage violation of the Fair Labor Standards Act. $124,000 in back wages and liquidated damages was recovered for 39 workers, and they assessed $4,000 in civil money penalties. And finally, a former pastor, Philip Brian Box, who now works at a Florida-based private Christian school, is facing theft charges after he allegedly stole nearly $9,000 from the Alabama Coroners Association, according to court records. Just another indication that if you steal from corporations, you're going to get smacked with a theft charge. Even if it's only $9,000. But if you steal $125,000 from 40 people, all you got to do is pay it back if you're a boss. It's insane. It's crazy. Okay, so there we go. That's Boss Watch, folks. Have we got the Clark County Education Association guy on the line yet?
I do not see them at this time.
That's fine. So, Matt Iglesias. Adam, you are familiar with Matt Iglesias, right? You're a big fan?
Yeah, I wouldn't say a big fan, but I am familiar, unfortunately, that he's got a lot of hot takes.
Yes.
A lot of centrist hot takes.
Yeah, a lot of hot takes. Adam's a big fan, religiously follows his work, and agrees with almost all of it. So he wrote an op-ed in Bloomberg.com titled "Musk Shows Why the U.S. Labor Movement Faces Long Odds." And so basically, and you know,
can I just stop you there? It's already off to a bad start. It's already off to a bad start. You've name dropped Elon Musk. You're on Bloomberg.com, and Matt Iglesias is going to give us, the inside scoop on what really is going on with America's labor movement.
Right.
All right. So I think we're in for something here.
Yeah, we're in for something.
Thankfully, I don't know what we're in for, so it'll be a shock, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, and now, unfortunately, I'm not able to read the entire article because it is paywalled, but a friend of the show, Hamilton Nolan, screenshotted an interesting piece of the article, and that's what I'm going to be responding to. So I guess just to be fair, to be very charitable, it's possible that Hamilton Nolan cut out a piece of the article, and right before it, he said, Matt Iglesias said, this would be something that a dumb person says. And then he debunks it later in the article, and Hamilton Nolan is just trying to get a cheap dunk on Twitter. That's possible, right? That's not out of the realm of possibility. But from the clip, from the screenshot of the article, and from other conversation about it that I've seen on Twitter, basically the gist seems to be, the gist does seem to be pointing to a real problem, but he way overstates it. And he actually kind of falls into the problem and basically does some propaganda for the boss. And he says the problem is that, union contracts basically, show non-union automakers where they need to go to keep the union out, basically. And so as long as non-union automakers raise the wages to be, relatively competitive with union automakers, which they're trying to do, they're still, significantly, noticeably behind where the union automakers are. But they're giving out these raises. And so Matt Iglesias, the point of the article seems to be basically that, that makes it difficult to win a union. And the thing that's really kind of galling is that so here's the snapshot that Hamilton posted. The ferociously anti-union CEO responded to a surge in organizing activity at Tesla factories by announcing preemptive wage increases, essentially giving his non-union workers the vast majority of what they could have won with a union contract. That's a classic move in industries where competition between union and non-union firms. When a union drive becomes plausible, the non-union companies respond with a mix of carrots and sticks. And yes, that's correct. But the wage increases do not essentially give non-union workers the vast majority of what they could have won with a union contract. That's just not true. And saying that really does, a disservice to the public and to auto workers who may be, seeing this or hearing this argument peripherally. Like, look, you're getting basically all that you would have gotten with a union contract, and that's just not true. And Hamilton points, rightly so, to the UAW contract that is being discussed. Like, if you just actually look at it and then look at what Tesla employees, what their compensation package is, it's like, hugely different. It's hugely different. So the idea that he thinks, and it just shows his lack of understanding about, what the UAW contract, this whole big thing that was a big part of the news for months. He obviously was not following it closely because he has no idea what's in it. It's bonkers. And so some of the things that, the UAW contract gives that Tesla doesn't provide are, for one, you've got to negotiate everything, right? You can't, the boss can't just say like, okay, I'm going to change this and then do it. You got to actually negotiate. There are, they have a pension, right, at most of these places, and where they don't, they have a 401k. 100% employer-paid health insurance. They have the right to strike over plant closures. There's just a lot of stuff that the UAW members have and the union in the union plants that Tesla is of course not giving. Because, that's the whole reason he doesn't want the union in, is so he doesn't have to give away these benefits. So, yeah.
And we do have our guest on the line now, just so you are aware.
Right. Adam, is there anything else that you wanted to say about that, or is that basically it?
No, I think you got it. I think it's a mistake to say that encompasses, all that you get out of a union contract, and like having representation on the floor, being able to pursue, grievances, being able to just have protection, to have safety committees. Everything that comes with a union contract cannot be just boiled down to wage gains. And I think that's a really simplistic mistake to make. And like you said, a disservice to the folks reading it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, really, it just, that's kind of his shtick, is being this guy who pretends to have an expertise in basically everything, who actually knows very little about most of the stuff that he comments on. That's kind of his shtick, and he continued his shtick with this article in Bloomberg. So, all right. So our next guest is from the Clark County Education Association. Really excited for this conversation. The Clark County Education Association represents teachers in Las Vegas, and we now have the executive director of the Clark County Education Association on to talk to us about their new contract that they just won and the new campaign that they are embarking on. John, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Glad to have you. Really excited about this conversation. And, before we jump into the contract talk, can you talk to us about, just what got you involved in the labor movement and, what brought you to the position that you're in today?
Too long for this show. I've got 4 decades into this. It's really about trying to make a difference for working people. That's the simplest way I can put it.
There you go. That's the right reason. And so talking about this contract with Las Vegas teachers, I was talking to Paula about this, and it was really shocking, especially the compensation packages of Las Vegas teachers. Can you give us just a background understanding of the compensation package and the working conditions of Las Vegas teachers over the past few years?
Well, I think it's first important to understand that the Clark County School District is the 5th largest school district in the country. There's over 300,000 students. These are mainly working class students of color. And Nevada, which is primarily based on 2 industries, gaming and mining, historically really has never invested in public education in this state. So the funding levels have been historically low, ranked nationally near the bottom a lot of times. And the reason is pretty simple. Those industries don't need an educated workforce, right? So they're not going to invest in it. It hasn't become a real high priority. Now, of recent, I would say over the last several years, we've been trying to lead the efforts to make it more of a priority, to get the kind of funding that we need in these classrooms for these kids and for these educators to do what they do. And so this contract, I think, is the result of about, maybe 6 years work. In this state, most of the funding for public education comes from the state. The state has a political or state government process that's called a citizen government, which means that they only meet every 2 years. And when they meet, they have a session for 120 days. And so you then have to live with the consequences of what comes out of that session for 2 years. So we take that pretty serious. And each session that we go into, we try to advance progress in public education, whether it's on the funding level or whether it's on good policy that makes sure that these kids learn and that these frontline educators have support. So this contract, like I said, is the results of several years' work, essentially starting up in the state government, securing the kind of funding that we need before it got down to the school district. And in the end, it was designed to give significant salary increases to our frontline educators, to give additional money for those educators that are in challenging schools and classrooms. 70% of our student population is on free and reduced lunch. So we have, almost 200 schools that are Title I schools. And out of that, about 160 of those have 82% of all the vacancies. The vacancy levels in this school district amount to about 30,000 kids each year don't have a teacher, they have a substitute. And so the vacancies are in the numbers of anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000, right? And the teachers that we represent is over 18,000. So the salary increases were designed to address the vacancy issue, to try to give people a boost in pay, to keep them here, as well as to be competitive, to recruit people, and then more so to be very surgical to try to get teachers into these high need schools where these kids can get a teacher in every classroom. The deal was worth $750 million. The legislature dumped $2.5 billion in their last session in public education in this state. So when you do the math, we got about a third of it, and we try to get it into the pocketbooks of these teachers.
That's pretty significant. And, you said that a big part of it was the salary increase. What was the starting salary for teachers in Las Vegas and in Clark County before this contract?
Well, before this contract, it was about 50,000, and the top pay was a little under 100,000. With this contract, the entry level by the second year will be almost 60,000, and the top pay will be almost $142,000. So a pretty significant jump. It's very competitive with the Western United States, SoCal in particular, LA Unified, for example, which is the second largest school district in the country.
That is, like you said, that's a huge jump. And the reason I wanted you to say that is because when Paula told me that about the starting salary before this contract, that absolutely baffled me, because it was not that much higher than starting salary for Alabama teachers. Alabama teachers' starting salary is 43,000 something, right, Adam?
Yeah, something around those lines, in the low to mid 40s.
And so, only $6,000-7,000 above what teachers in Alabama is making is that's pretty close, and the cost of living in Las Vegas is not very close. So, starting at $50,000 a year in Las Vegas, I imagine was very difficult, and I could see why the Clark County school districts were having a difficult time recruiting.
Yeah, I mean, look, nationally, there's a teacher shortage. So it's a teacher's market. You can go pretty much anywhere you want in this country because, a lot of people have not gone into the profession. And why? Because the profession hasn't been valued as it was once. And so the lifting the compensation package is, part of that effort to try to catapult it back up there.
Were there any other big wins in this contract that you think would be worth talking about?
Well, I mean, we made some significant improvement around, our health insurance for these teachers. We got almost a 20% increase on employer contributions to our self-funded nonprofit health plan for these teachers. We got additional pay for any minute worked after their contract day. It used to be like $31.50. We got it up to $50. And we started the school year where these teachers took a cut of 1.875% in pay for their public pension plan. And we got that restored of 1.875% too. So when you really look at the total package, even though there was a 10% the first year and an 8% the second year, on average, the range of increases is anywhere from 23% to 34% for these teachers, which is pretty significant.
Right. And especially over a 2-year period, we've been used to union contracts, 30%, but over 3, 4, or even 5 years, right? 30% over 2 years is very significant. Something that I was told about the contract campaign is that it was very slow going, and it was difficult to get the school district to take the negotiations seriously. Can you talk to us about the timeline and why it was that it took so long for them to get serious?
Well, let me kind of put it in context. On March 30th, 2023, we started our negotiations with the school district, and what we put on the table is what we ended on in a settlement on December 20th, 2023. So it was a 9-month struggle, right? And it wasn't because the district never had the money. I mean, we played a significant role in helping to secure the money at the state level to, draw it down to the district level. It was really about priorities and whether or not the district wanted to make the type of investment in compensation that we felt, or our members felt, really was needed. And so there was this, essential roadblock that was based on the priority issue. And it got very contentious and got very ugly. But before we even started the negotiation process, we had essentially reached our limits with the school administration and had publicly called for either the resignation or the termination of the superintendent. So imagine for a moment you're about to go into negotiations, and the union has said, this guy's got to go. We don't want this guy around. We did a lot of TV ads. We did a lot of canvassing in different districts. I mean, just to put a lot of pressure on these guys because he's a liability to public education. So that contributed to it. It was like, okay, union, we're going to take you on and we're going to beat you. And, the results are the results. They lost, we won, and now we're moving forward with the next step. But it was a lengthy process. These educators hung in there. I don't know how many rallies we had. We had, dozens of massive rallies, half a dozen massive meetings where we had several thousand educators. We had a lot of rallies in front of the schools. Many of them involved students and parents. We had 6 high school students walk out of school in support of these teachers during this struggle. We had a half a dozen schools that engaged in these kind of wildcat sick outs on their own, which, caused us to get dinged in court for, essentially embarking on an illegal strike. But what I'm trying to suggest, there was a lot of momentum. There was a lot of unity. And even though we didn't have the right to strike in this state, people were they were prepared to win it and take whatever they needed to do, and as long as they needed to do to achieve that.
Is there any bargaining strategy that y'all had that you would want to share that you feel like would be instructive for teachers in other states or anybody that's bargaining their contract now?
I think it varies by industry, and I think it varies by school district, and I think it varies based on funding levels. It varies based on relationships and the politics of a school board and all that. So, I would be, not too inclined to try to give anybody advice, except that if you don't have your members and they're not organized and they're not, supportive of the fight, particularly if the fight takes on a very protracted nature, right? Because at some point it becomes a fight of attrition. The other side waits to see whether or not there's a break in your ranks and people are ready to settle. And so that would be an advice I would suggest. But most people that have done this kind of stuff and have been successful, they know that already. So I wouldn't be giving them any advice they don't already know.
Right. And what was the mechanism that finally did settle the negotiations?
Well, I think what ultimately, beyond the steadfast unity and perseverance of our members, it's our political influence. I mean, we're an organization, and I have no idea who you have on your show in terms of labor organizations, but we have no loyalty to any political party. So we'll work with anybody that works with our issues, whether they're a Democrat or a Republican. And in the state of Nevada, we have split government right now. The Democrats control the legislative branch and the Republicans control the executive branch, the governorship. And so we worked with the leadership of both parties, both branches of government. And, we had done that not overnight, but over the last several years. And I think it's that kind of relationship building or that's based on issues, not partisan politics, paid off, because both the speaker and the majority leader of the legislature came out and called for the firing of the superintendent during this contract dispute. Wow. The governor was behind the scenes, essentially, telling the school district settle. Never came to us and said, "Hey, you guys need to compromise," because he knew what we were proposing was the right thing. So I think that played a role. Starts with your membership, and then I think the political influence we had played a role. But in the end, the mechanism for a settlement is in this state is binding arbitration, right? And so we don't have the right to strike. In 1969, teachers in Clark County essentially had a couple of walkouts, and the gaming industry, had fits over that because their workers, kids that were in these schools were not in these schools, and so they didn't show up to work. So in any event, a law was passed prohibiting the right to strike for public sector workers. But in exchange for that, we got what's called binding arbitration. And binding arbitration is, if there's impasse in negotiations, then you get an arbitrator, a neutral third party. You have so many sessions, and then either a decision is made by the arbitrator. It's baseball arbitration, by the way. They either take our proposal or the district's proposal. It's short of them rendering a decision that way, they can order the parties back to the table and negotiate an agreement. And that's, in fact, what happened here. And the arbitrator just accepted that negotiated agreement as his decision. But the problem is, for us, is it took a long time, right? And this is the fourth arbitration we've had in the last 10, 11, 12 years. And, the longest arbitration process for us took 1.5 years. The shortest one took 7 months. So, it's a system that doesn't work. And that's why we put on our agenda that we're gonna change the law.
Yes, yeah, that has been, as far as I can tell, a big impetus for your the new campaign that y'all are embarking on to try to change the way that these negotiations can be resolved in the state of Nevada. Can you talk to us about your new campaign?
Yeah, so we're going to file an initiative petition, a statutory ballot initiative that essentially allows educators in the state of Nevada the right to strike. And so that requires, a little over 100,000 signatures of voters in the 4 congressional districts here. We've got till November of this year to get those signatures. We're going to do it. We're very confident. We've done this before. We've gone to and used the initiative petition to move policy and move funding up in the state government. So we're very, very confident that this is going to happen. But what happens is once we qualify those signatures, before it goes to the 2026 election cycle for voters to vote on, it goes before the Nevada legislature and the governor in 2025. And they have 40 days to act on that initiative petition. They either can accept it, they can reject it, and if they reject it, it can go to the ballot. Or, there might be some kind of compromise worked out, and if that's the case, if we still don't want to, take it to the people in 2026, we can withdraw the initiative petition. But that's what we're doing. We're essentially, and that's a significant resource issue, and that's one of the things that our organization is fortunate to have, is the type of resources to play politics, hardball politics in the state of Nevada. I failed to say at the beginning of this meeting, we are an independent teachers union. We're the largest independent teachers union in the country, as well as in the state of Nevada. So we're local controlled, if you will. So every penny of dues that are paid by an educator is controlled by the local, which affords us the opportunity to do things like these ballot initiatives.
That's interesting. So the Clark County Education Association is not affiliated with the National Education Association.
No, we broke away in 2018. Pretty bitter legal fight, but we broke away, got our freedom, and it's been nothing but smooth sailing since.
Well, Adam worked for the NEA affiliate here in Alabama, and and worked is the operative word, past tense, and so I'm sure that he has some feelings about that too.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to applaud y'all for the fight and for showing the fight. I think that's really important because here in Alabama, educators, as a former educator, we don't have collective bargaining. We don't have the right to strike. We're facing conditions that in other states would be totally unacceptable. But I just really applaud the fight of the Clark County Education Association. And like you said, playing hardball politics and being willing to go to the people, because I think the people are behind educators and are behind working class folks more broadly. And so I'm wishing y'all much success. And I really am looking forward to seeing this happen. I think this is, a historic thing for public sector workers to regain rights that have been lost, right? We've been losing for so many decades as working people. To see our unions fight to regain what has been lost, I think is a really big deal. So I really appreciate what y'all are doing.
Yeah, thanks.
And so, you're interested, you're going to be pushing for the right to strike for educators in Nevada. And so if you could, explain to us what the benefit of that would be, why do you want educators to have the right to strike? The common, one of the responses would be that, oh, you just hate the children, right? That's why every teacher goes into the profession, is they just hate kids. Is that why y'all want the right to strike?
Yeah, well, listen, we don't take this lightly, and we don't take the issue for granted among parents, among businesses, et cetera. So we've done a lot of outreach even before we filed this ballot initiative. And we actually did some field research, some polling to see where people were at. Let me just say this last struggle took 9 months. These kids suffered in those 9 months more than if we had been on strike for 2 days. And that's part of our argument. If we had the right, we would there would be a more equal level playing field in terms of the power balance with this school district. And we believe very strongly that this contract would have been settled a lot quicker, right, with the benefits getting into the classroom and trying to get more teachers in front of these kids that don't have teachers. And so our argument with the community and parents in particular is the system doesn't work. And yeah, it's very easy, and in a very self-serving way, I can explain to you how it hurts teachers, but I can also provide enough evidence to show you how it hurts kids, because kids aren't learning during this period, right? They're a victim of this dysfunctional law that exists. And so that's in part why, we take very serious what we're doing, and we want the support of the parents. And with the business community, we're basically saying, look, we're not asking you to support it. We're just telling you stay out of the fight. The community can decide this issue. You don't have to decide this issue. So.
No, I think that I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think that absolutely, I think that there's a certain argument that that it's just fundamentally a worker's right to strike. I think that's also really important. But there are, as you just laid out, a lot of practical reasons why basically every interested party should support this measure. It would have good outcomes for all involved, and so looking forward to seeing y'all winning on that, just like you did on the contract. And before we let you go, I did have a couple of things I was wondering about the contract. Did y'all have in the contract, were you able to get anything on parental leave or planning time protections, special education caseload limits, or class size limits? Anything along those lines in the contract?
No substantive change on those fronts. Really, what drove this settlement was the fiscal component, right? So you can't reduce class sizes if you don't have teachers, right? And so you're not going to have teachers unless you're going to pay them to stay and pay to have them come in, right? And caseload's the same with special ed. One of the additional compensation we got was another $5,000 on their base pay for all special ed teachers because we have vacancies there as well. So you're not going to address these caseloads, these class sizes, until you address the vacancies issue. And so that's where the priority was.
Gotcha.
Right. You've got to have the educators in the classroom, right? And so you have to be able to recruit and retain those. And I think, it's just, you can't emphasize it enough. I know it's a slogan, but the educators' working conditions really are the students' learning conditions. And so when you have vacant classrooms because you won't pay to recruit and retain qualified folks, that's impacting these kids and these families. And so I think, the contract gains that y'all provided here and that your members helped win is going to really impact the whole community. It's going to uplift folks throughout the community. And so it's really to be celebrated.
Yeah, I mean, I listen, we're not taking for granted that there's going to be a light switch of success overnight, right? And now, we're going to take on the burden of trying to demonstrate success, that these kind of gains will result in getting more teachers in a classroom, having better student outcomes because of that. And so we're not going to just walk away from our responsibility. Why? Because we had tremendous support in this fight from the public because they saw it and the need for it. And now, it's our burden as well to make sure, okay, we want your kids to learn and we want to show improvement on that front. So it's not one of these things where we win and then we walk away and we say, okay, next time, let's just get ready for another fight. It's like the fight now is to improve education, particularly, and I'll say this again, these are working class kids of color. Many of them live in poverty. And they're not going to have an opportunity in this country unless they get a decent education. And right now, a lot of them are not, for the reasons I think I shared on this program.
John Velardita, Executive Director of the Clark County Education Association, representing workers, educators in Las Vegas and the surrounding areas. Appreciate your time on the program.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, appreciate you. Take care.
All right, you too.
All right. Yeah, really good stuff. Interesting contrast with, like Adam alluded to, the situation of educators in Alabama. Was there anything else that you wanted to say on that, the kind of comparison and contrast piece between what they were able to win and the working conditions of Alabama educators, Adam?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things stand out. The fact that they had an active contract campaign, right, with rallies and with activity as something that you don't see in Alabama. You don't see very much in the South, I don't believe, broadly in our public schools. The fact that there is an actual contract negotiation, right? The fact that the members have input into the process, right? By and large, salaries in Alabama, there's a state minimum salary matrix that's set. A lot of the school districts, that's all they pay. Some, all they can afford to pay. Some, that's what they choose to pay. Right. But the state legislature puts that into place. Teachers don't have any input. The Alabama Education Association and other education groups, of course, lobby and try to influence it, obviously. But, that is not the same as having an up or down vote as a member. That's not the same as electing a bargaining team representative to go to the table and represent you and to complete bargaining input. It's just a very different process, a less democratic process. And so it's going to be interesting to see, if they build off these contract wins in terms of salaries and, can they recruit and retain people? I totally hear John's argument and agree with John's argument that you got to pay folks first to get them in the door. before you can start addressing other issues. But working conditions are really huge, and something that, I think probably if we took a look, we could see in Las Vegas there are protections in place for teachers that Alabama educators would dream of. Right. And that is what you see. You see a stark difference between what you experience in Alabama's public schools, Mississippi's public schools versus unionized states. In Alabama, a teacher is only allotted 30 minutes of planning time. And it's not even called planning time. It's just, free of supervision or supervision, basically 30 minutes where you're not directly supervising kids per day. And there's no enforcement mechanism for that. There's no way to, penalize the employer for violating that. So if they put you in meetings all week, if they make you cover someone's class during your planning period, there's no way to really do much about it. You can file a grievance that, gets nowhere, more than likely, because again, what leverage do you have? And that's just an example. And so, yeah, I think there's a lot of stark differences. What it's inspiring for me to see an education association that is being proactive and is trying to push the needle, right? They are not just lying down and saying, well, I guess we don't have the right to strike. Oh, well, that was settled 50 years ago. Right. They're actually bringing that back into the public debate and are willing to commit significant resources to fight this fight because it's the right thing to do. And, that would be a welcome change of pace in Alabama, to see educators organizing, to see them organize in big numbers, to see them actually have political influence and to proactively shape the agenda and to ask, and well, not just ask, but to demand the rights that they ought to have. Why should Alabama educators have less rights than educators in Nevada, in Michigan, in California? Why? And so that's the question we have to look at. And I want Alabama educators to ask themselves that question. Do you deserve less? And if you believe that you don't, then it's time to organize.
Yeah. Appreciate everybody hanging with us. Jose, Bien Dia, Peanut Q Public, greetings y'all in solidarity. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Do want to note, give Jared in the chat a kudos for helping arrange this interview. There was a teacher from a member of the Clark County Education Association that is in a Garfield group chat on Twitter with Jared, the president of the union at NASA here in Huntsville. So appreciate that connection and their interest in coming on the show. Garfield bringing workers together. Yeah, indeed. Brandon, good afternoon. Fellow workers, good afternoon. Brandon, Austin says, hey, y'all, solidarity forever. Hello, Austin. Appreciate everybody tuning in, like I said. 844-899-TVLR is the phone number, 844-899-8857 if you want to call in. We've got this clip from WebMD. We all know what WebMD, we've all seen it and seen, that I've got a headache. And so WebMD tells me that I have cancer and I'm going to die in 2 days. There's been this trend of employers trying to bring workers back into the office, trying to end telework. There was a huge trend for that, like about, maybe this time last year. I do think it's died down, and I think that a lot of office work employers have resigned themselves to accepting the future place of telework in their employment. I think that there's been a lot of resignation on the part of bosses that at least for the foreseeable future, telework is going to be a big part of the workplace. But WebMD has not joined that acceptance, and they are bringing people back into the office. And they had a bizarre video accompanying the return to office announcement. So I'm gonna play this for everybody, and we're gonna react to it. Ben, let's play this clip.
We have been slow in getting back with some people and in some places. That's about to change.
Your manager will be in touch with you shortly about how this will be implemented and tracked.
Thank you, team. I want to leave you with this. We aren't asking or negotiating at this point. We're informing of how we need to work together going forward. It's, again, for the simple reason that great companies are built by great people working together and seeing each other eye to eye and tackling the big task. Thank you in advance for your help.
Talking about hey now, hey now, hey now. I go one day. Shagamofino anane, shagamofinane, shagamofinane, shagamofinane.
All right, so there we go. Did that convince you, Adam, of the value of coming back to the office and how bad it would be to be able to negotiate this return to office with your employer?
I'm totally convinced. Like, I'm sold. I'm with
What
it.
do you need to say after that?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, we mean business, right?
Yeah, they meant it. They meant it, and I'm picking it up. And so, hey, I'm sold.
That's just such a strange clip, condescending. Obviously, at this point, we're not negotiating. You know, we're just informing you this is what's happening. Very condescending, very arrogant, and super bizarre song choice, and illustrative of the importance of unionization, because you can't, in a union workplace, you can't just, the employer can't just unilaterally change working conditions without bargaining over it, without negotiating over it. That thing that, the CEO was loath to do with his own employees, because he doesn't think that, they deserve a say in their working conditions, or, the conditions of the environment that they spend the majority of their waking lives, right? He doesn't think that they deserve that. And so, you've got to take that. You've got to unionize, and you've got to take that. Otherwise, your employer is not going to give it to you, right?
So you know what this hits me like? This hits me like the bosses all have a group chat, and they made a little edit or something, and they sent it to each other. And then they're like, should we make this the official position of the company? This is absurd. Why are there people dancing? Like, hooray, we're going
dancing to some.
What are they dancing?
Yeah, and what even language was that?
Who got paid to make this? Like
somebody got paid way too fucking much to make that. Is the answer?
I'm sure. Yeah, like I do wonder. Like, yeah, how did this idea get cooked up? Was it the boss's group chat? Was it some slick consultant? Some slick consultant making ungodly amounts of money per hour. Sold
how
them
much
this
marketing
idea.
research went into
the
little clip of people dancing about how they're going to force their employees back to work.
Yeah, some joker with a degree from like a fancy institution probably came up with that. Like, we've got it now. We've figured out how to address these.
Just tell them they
restive
have no
workers.
choice and then dance about it.
Yeah.
Right.
Hey, you got
They'll be so thrown off, they'll forget the fact that you're being a dick. Yeah.
Yeah, super wild, but illustrative of the importance of unionization, because they can't do that to you if you are unionized. They got to negotiate, and you deserve to be able to
They could still make weird videos. Now that is allowed even in union shops. Weird videos from management, but
although you could there's nothing saying that you can't put it in a contract saying you gotta no fucking weird videos. All videos put out by HR have to be approved by the executive committee of the union or the workplace safety committee or something like that, right?
There you go.
I thought I had the wrong clip when you loaded this one up, because I was just so confused. I was like, did I get the right clip? Because what does this have to do with WebMD? What's going on here?
Yeah. So there you go. Maybe that's something that people can consider in their next contract negotiations. Prohibition on weird videos.
Right. That's ambitious bargaining.
Bargaining for the common good.
Absolutely.
So speaking of people being weird, Adam, you reached out to a local news media outlet, that really, I really don't know. I mean, I have no idea. I had never heard of them before you told me that you reached out to them. Athens Now is the publisher. Do you have any idea of their reach? Do you think that they actually reach like more people than we do?
Well, they give it away for free at like the dry cleaners and places like that. So, it's that kind of magazine.
Right.
And so, yeah, I run across it at restaurants or the dry cleaners or, when I'm running errands in town, I see it out and about for free at the little rack by the door. I don't ever see anyone pick it up but me because I'm just weird like that and just want to see what they're saying in it. And I've seen Phil Williams. You're a big fan of Phil Williams. I know you listen to him a lot. Right Side Radio.
I'm a right side ruffian is what his fans are called. So
that's the fanboy club. Okay.
Yeah. Right side ruffians.
Gotcha.
Got to really be a ruffian around here to be right winger.
Yeah.
It's very countercultural being right wing in the state of Alabama.
It's hard, man. It's hard.
Yeah. They have
it tough. Yeah. Wonder how much Coke dollars were spent coming up with that term. But anyway,
probably
Alabama
wonder
Policy
if it was the
Institute,
same consultants that came up with that WebMD video.
I mean, you wouldn't be surprised, honestly. As much money is flowing around from some of these billionaires that back some of these outlets. But anyway, I've seen Phil Williams getting an article in Athens Now. And so I thought, well, okay, if the right-wing radio guy has an article, what if we did an article about us? And so I reached out to the editor just, with some general information about the Valley Labor Report and was like, hey, I live in Athens. I'm familiar with your publication here. And there's a labor union radio show in your backyard. And labor unions, newsflash, they're a big deal, especially now. Right. Very popular now. We're kind of in the news a lot. And so just reached out to be like, hey, do you want to do anything? Could be an article about the show, could be, an op-ed, whatever, just kept it broad. But I thought, one media project to another in North Alabama, why not try to collaborate? But I did get a rejection, sad to say, it's not the first rejection I've ever received in my life, but sure it won't be the last. But it was an interesting rejection. She said, we're going to pass on your kind offer for a number of reasons, some involving production. Fair enough. I mean, I literally would have just given you a press release to run, but that's fine.
Copy and paste is tough.
Yeah. The most pertinent is that I endured a poor experience with a hospitality union many years ago. Then I had the blessing of working 14 years in a non-union house that had better wages, better benefits, a positive work environment, outstanding leadership, and upper mobility. Interestingly, people from the union houses were beating down the door to work in ours. All the best. Publisher of Athens Now. So that's interesting. She had one bad experience many years ago and has now totally written off all of labor, all of the union movement. Her one bad experience many years ago. And unfortunately, that's a real thing in our movement, right? I have been trying to recruit folks who say, no, I had a bad experience, in 1983 or my dad had a bad experience back in 1973. And so that is a real phenomenon that we have to deal with, that, people will take one bad experience and then write off everything, right? It could have been one bad local inside of one large union, inside of one large movement. That's very possible, right? And you wouldn't, it's just, you wouldn't do that in other aspects of your life where if you have one bad experience, like you write off an entire industry, for example, right? Like if you go to a concert and have one bad experience, you're not going to necessarily write off like concerts forever for your life, right? And it's the same phenomena you see though sometimes with unions, and it's interesting that people have that approach. Also, I'm calling BS on that anyway. I mean, obviously, I just find that I find that really, really hard to believe that there was a non-union shop that was just that much better than a union shop close by. You know, maybe it's true. Maybe it's true. It can happen. Absolutely. You know, it's a hospitality union, and who knows what the scenario was, but I just think it's interesting that people will write off labor unions because of a bad experience that happened a long time ago. And I've run into a lot of people who are like that, and I just don't get it, because ultimately unions are the membership. Now, unions are institutions as well, with flaws and with leaders who can be flawed. But ultimately, you know, it's up to us as the members to make unions good or bad. And I don't know, I just think it's bizarre to say that one contract experience at one particular local of one particular union of the entire movement of the United States of America is somehow representative of, you know, that's the end all be all of everything you need to know about unions.
Right. And now because of that, I'm not even going to engage it. You know, I mean, she didn't even ask you, you know, there weren't any follow-up questions about like, you know, tell me more about your project. Maybe I will, maybe I won't, you know, just tell me more about it. You know, give me a phone call. I want to, you know, suss you out. You know, no engagement at all with, you know, another small local media project by a local labor leader, you know, I mean, political coordinator in the stagehands union, trustee on the labor council, you know, I mean, you undoubtedly, you know, if labor leaders are a thing, and to whatever extent that phenomenon is true, I mean, you know, you fit the bill. You know, I'm not even going to engage. I'm just going to say, like, no, without any, you know, any prodding. It's it's super bizarre. Not a very kind of, you know, the media, I think, in its best form is going to be kind of curious. You know, you ask questions and that's how you get stories, right? A very incurious reaction to your
and you know, like, I've had bad experiences with media people, but unlike this person, I'm not going to write off every media person ever, you know, just because of some bad experiences in the past. You know, I just met someone in the media who is very incurious, but I'm not going to assume that they're all that way.
You're never going to apply to another
newspaper.
Now
that I'm rejected, I guess I should never reach out to anyone ever.
What irks me about it is, like, a union is kind of a democratic system, so you could technically have a pretty conservative quote-unquote union, and I'm sure a union in Alabama is quite different in a lot of ways to, like, someone far out west or up Seattle.
Right.
But, you know, I've been voting democratically for a long time, but my government's pretty not the way I want it, but I still vote, you know what I mean? It's like, had a bad experience with democracy around here. But I'm still gonna,
I've had a lot of bad experiences with
democracy.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's kind of funny. Like, it's just a tiny little thing, a free newspaper. But yeah, I did think it was interesting. And it is a phenomenon that's real. And you know, maybe there are people out there listening or in the chat who can help kind of come up with how do we address that, because it's something we run into in the field all the time. And I try to, you know, address it the way I have, that, you know, people they have a church service they don't like, they go visit another church, or maybe they try another denomination, you know, or maybe they give up religion altogether. That's their choice too, right? But generally, people will not write off a broad category of their existence based off one anecdote. So it's just weird to have that approach with labor unions. And obviously there's a vested interest, and that is incorporated into union busting, and it's incorporated into anti-union talking points, right? It's a common trope. Well, so-and-so had a bad experience back in the day, right? And so now you can't be open to what labor may have to offer because so-and-so had a bad deal years ago.
Right.
Yeah, so it's something that comes up a lot. I'm not heartbroken by the rejection. I do find it a little questionable, the facts. But, more power to her. Doesn't change the fact that on average, labor union members receive higher wages. Labor union members receive better benefits. Labor union members are more likely to receive pensions. Labor union members actually have a voice in their job, in their working conditions, in their pay. Labor union members have just cause. They have due process on the job. They can't just be walked out for any damn reason, right? These are all important. These are important. And just because you may have had a bad experience years ago, that doesn't write off everything. I'm sorry you had a bad experience. That sucks. I don't want any worker to have a bad experience with labor unions. And unfortunately, there are a lot who have. And we've got to take ownership of that and accountability of it. And we have to, repair harm where harm is done. But yeah, that's all I got to say about it. I will live another day.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm going to be praying for you. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Joe and David in the Facebook chat. We've got some more folks in the YouTube chat. Terry and Reese, welcome. Hello. Thanks for listening. 844-899-TVLR is the phone number. 844-899-8857 if you want to give us a call or leave us a message after we go off the air. Adam, as we are wrapping up the show today, there are a few just shorter stories that you wanted to just kind of that we've been thinking about that we don't have. It's not like we've got fully fleshed out segments prepared, but just some things that you wanted to make sure that we mentioned before we wrapped up today.
Yeah, a couple of things that were on my mind. I want to think about IATSE. Had a big year this past year. I'm proud to be a member of IATSE Local 900 and, work as a union stagehand and serve as a political coordinator for the local. And this has been a big year for the international. There was a lot of new organizing in 2023. We saw organizing in the VFX department, video special effects at Marvel, at Disney. We saw organizing in the video game industry. And so I do recommend for those who are IATSE members, check out IATSE.net, go to the publications. They put out an article called 5 Key Moments from 2023, and kind of lifted up some of these big stories. Something you're not going to find on the IATSE website, of course, for obvious reasons, is that there was a reform caucus that went live this past year. CREW, the Caucus of Rank and File Entertainment Workers. And so we've seen reform caucuses within unions, such as the Teamsters, such as the UAW, such as Chicago Teachers Union. And we've seen how powerful they can be in changing narratives and in changing leaders, changing structures. And so it's going to be really interesting to see what happens there. A couple other quick hits. Obviously, as cold as it is, with this winter weather we've been dealing with, I do want to remind people that there is the low income home energy assistance program, LIHEAP. So there is assistance out there for folks whose income is not above 150% of the federal poverty level. So check out your local community action network, community action partnership, community action agency. I know they run by different names. Here in Madison County and Limestone County, it's Community Action Agency. So check those out. That's how you get some assistance with your heating bills. I know there are folks listening who may benefit from that. A couple of wild stories. We're going to talk more next week about child labor and the renewed debate to loosen child labor laws here in Alabama. And I wanted to lift up an article in Rolling Stone about a very similar thing that's happening in Florida. The article is titled, Florida Republicans Want to Destroy Restrictions on Teenage Labor. Nikki Ramirez wrote the article. I do recommend you check that out, see what's happening down there. And last thing, which is a wild story, 215 people have been buried behind a Mississippi jail since 2016, according to a civil rights attorney. And basically, there was families of people in Mississippi who were being notified well after time or not being notified at all that their loved ones had died. And there was a mass grave behind a Mississippi jail. And, this has been discovered, hundreds of bodies. It's just a wild story. And so, we talked today about the prison labor lawsuit in Alabama. Unfortunately, conditions in Mississippi really aren't that much better, if at all. And so that was a really crazy story I wanted to highlight as well.
All right. Well, I think that will be it for us this week. Going to be a little bit shorter on overtime, but not much. Appreciate everybody tuning in.
I do want to mention a couple of the events. I got a chance to run through those real quick at the end of the main show. But for those of you who are local in particular, I want to highlight some events that are going on in the area. Lots of important opportunities, ways to get involved. We do this show not just to get the message out, but hopefully to get people to get activated, right? And to do something, to be in motion. We want to see working people active and taking our destiny into our own hands. And so kind of in that vein, I do want to recommend the Labor Notes trainings that are up, labornotes.org/events. Race and Labor, the first session was on the 16th. So if you missed that, you really missed out this month. I'm sure they'll bring it back. But I do want to mention Tuesday, January 30th, is going to be their stewards workshop. This is for investigating grievances. So that will be really good for those of you who are stewards or are interested in serving in that role. The Madison County Legislative Delegation is holding its annual forum on Monday night, the 22nd, from 6:30 to 8:30. It's at the Huntsville City Council chambers. If you want to sign up to speak for 3 minutes, get there at 6. The event will be televised and streamed via the City of Huntsville's channel. And all of the legislators who cover even a bit of Madison County are expected to be there. So this is a really important opportunity to speak up for working people in front of some key elected officials, as well as what's probably going to be a packed room full of our neighbors. So if you're a union member who would like to speak, hit up myself, hit up Jacob, let's coordinate and chat about it. On that note, the Labor Council, we're holding our meeting Tuesday night, 6 o'clock in Madison. So delegates from local unions across the area are going to meet and strategize for the year ahead. Jacob's got some guests coming from other labor councils to talk about their success. So if you're a union member, even if your local is not affiliated, you are still invited. Definitely come on out because we need to work together to put together, a working people's agenda here in the Tennessee Valley. And then lastly, I have a couple of events with Alabama Arise. I'm going to do a virtual issue preview on the 24th at 12 o'clock, kind of a lunch and learn sort of thing. So if you're available at 12, hop on Zoom. You can email me at adam@alarise.org. We're going to be talking about the 2024 issue priorities and, how they could bring a better state for all of us. And if you're interested in learning how to get more involved, how to be an advocate, how to bring change on the state policy level, I have an advocacy training on January 29th at the downtown Huntsville Library, and that's going to be from 5:30 to 7. Again, adam@alarise.org. Shoot me an email, if you have any questions or to RSVP. Would love to see some of y'all there.
All right. And with that, it's going to wrap it up for us today, folks. Appreciate your time. Like us on the stream before you leave if you're watching us live, and give us 5 stars wherever you are listening. If you're listening to us on a podcast, particularly those of you who are listening on Apple, let's get those numbers up.
That's right.
Until next week.
And
see it. Oh,
I was just going to say, Jacob, have we announced that we've got over 1 million views on YouTube?
I don't know if we have or not, but yeah, we've broken 1 million views on YouTube. Yeah, so thank you.
Yeah, really appreciate all of the support, the liking, the sharing, the commenting. It all makes a difference. So thanks, y'all. Appreciate your time and appreciate your attention.
See you next week.